Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is yet another live worldwide transmission. I am your host, Alex Jones. It is Thursday, the 9th day of May, 2013. We've got Lord Christopher Monckton on Benghazi Gate, on the new pushes to get carbon taxes in place worldwide, UKIP's Ron Paul level victories over in the UK and Europe. Cody Wilson, all over the news, obviously, with the .22 caliber printable total gun, complete gun. Multiple states moving to ban it right now, California, New York, and criminal command base, the floating fortress of evil, district of criminals. He's going to be popping in as well. Godfrey Bloom, the head of UKIP, or one of the heads of UKIP, is going to be coming on to talk about their victories against the globalists. He's going to pop in. And then Dr. Steve Pachenik to get his take on Benghazi at the end of the third hour today. The Imperial Fuhrer, Obama, is scheduled to come into Austin today and shut down large parts of the city while he flies around above us in his Black Hawk helicopter. He's down here, reportedly, according to the Dallas Morning News, to expose the extremism of the Republican Party by connecting Texas to it. I'm not kidding. Senator Ted Cruz, who he's calling extreme, because Ted Cruz just calmly covers the Bill of Rights and Constitution, calmly calls them on their lies. Harry Reid is calling him a schoolyard bully. No, blaming all gun owners for 20 dead kids when crime rates drop 49%, violent crime, gun woundings 69%, and that's the new Justice Department numbers. Even crimes dropped even more than I had said crunching the numbers here at our office. I said 49. That was just one number. Crime with guns even more. And again, I just fall back on that because it just shows what frauds these people are. And then obviously the big, gigantic, massive enchilada, Benghazi Gate. You've got two different confirmed stand-downs with State Department officials saying it's on record, releasing the classified emails. They don't dare arrest them because it's not a violation of national security to expose treason in government. And now it's coming out. They ordered the complete stand-down. The ambassador had begged for security for weeks, intensified it in the days, knew they were being cased, saw most of the security leave. People that tried to get out early were carjacked and then weren't given support. The order was stand down, get these people out of the way. And again, people are like, this is such revelations. It's only revelations because it's government people admitting what was in the news in the first few weeks. All of this. And I tell you, the gigantic smoking gun is that the group that did this, that was the protesters, imagine going and attacking the state capitol, hypothetically, where you live, with 400 people. It's 200 at first, 400, then maybe 500, they're not sure, with artillery, grenade launchers, and heavy machine guns. And, you know, just say, hey, we're protesting. And then you just attack it with grenade launchers. I'm not saying do that. I'm saying this is the same thing. I mean, you call it a protest. And they announce they're going to call out the army on you. Just say, what? It's a protest. Attacking Libya and overthrowing Gaddafi was called a protest. 2+ years of attacks going on now in Syria. Car bombings, mass murder, our government openly running Al-Qaeda. That is now called protesting. I mean, I guess you could, like, chop your wife up, cut her head off, throw her off a roof, blow up a local church, and just say, hey, I'm protesting. And be like, oh, they're protesting. Don't complain. Syria, don't complain. They're protesting. And so the over-the-topness of government corruption, hiding in plain view, has now reached bizarro squared. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We'll be right back on the other side of this break. This could melt down the global. Gentlemen, again, thank you for joining us on this live Thursday edition. will be here for the next 3 hours, Lord willing. Lord Monckton, speaking of Lord willing, will be joining us to cover a host of issues dealing with globalism, Benghazi, the carbon taxes, big new initiatives by the global government and the fight against it with Lord Monckton. Cody Wilson, the inventor now of the 3D printable 22 caliber handgun, is going to be joining us, fellow Austinite. And then Godfrey Bloom, the head of UKIP, their big giant victory, showing the best in the elections in the UK. It's parliamentary, so it's incremental. It's got the system absolutely scared to death. And the establishment now apologizing to UKIP, trying to co-opt them. That's when you know you've won, is when they really start groveling. And then Dr. Steve Pachinik, I want to get his take on Benghazi. I had Pachinik on the week of Benghazi last year. I had Colonel Anthony Schaefer on, and we played some clips of this last night, and we laid out exactly what it was. We knew then it was an ordered stand-down, and in the months after that, it came out it was a stand-down. Of course, Obama wasn't asleep. Of course, Hillary knew. She says, well, what difference does it make why they're dead? Try that if you kill your wife or you kill your husband and you call the cops and they show up and they go, why is your wife stabbed to death in the bed? Did you do this? What difference does it make? What difference does it make? And this is about government being above the law. The district attorney of Travis County caught driving at 3 times the legal blood alcohol level on the wrong side of a highway, almost killing people. She almost had a bunch of head-on collisions. People called the cops. Right over there on the highway, right off of 620, right by Steiner Ranch. She's totally drunk on the footage, and the Democrats are all saying, hey, let her stay in office. This is no big deal. Even though there's a law that a district attorney cannot ever be arrested for public intoxication. There's a law because, you know, people drink, and there were issues with district attorneys strutting around drunk, threatening people in Texas history. You can look it up. Now she will do whatever she wants. And it's the same thing now with Benghazi. They will do what they want on this. They're saying Hillary's not going to resign. Rice isn't going to resign. They are caught red-handed in 2 stand-down orders that they then lied about. And 5 days after this happened, they had Rice in front of the UN and on all the news shows saying, remember this? Saying there, ladies and gentlemen, there has not been one single piece of evidence this was a terror attack. And they said that over and over and over and over and over again. And you can pull up the headlines. They even said that it was a conspiracy theory, that people were saying it was a terror attack. And they used some YouTube video that had been out for months that was, strangely enough, produced by a neocon FBI-connected individual who they set up and sent to prison. So much for free speech in America. And then they hyped that, trying to create riots in the Middle East to be the political distraction. A false flag, just like Fast and Furious, to be blamed on the Second Amendment. And even though they got caught, CBS News, caught, they still don't care. They're now blaming the Second Amendment with it. So we are here witnessing the unprecedented in modern history, open, naked, hand in the cookie jar staged event. And again, people are like, oh, this is so incredible. We have all the breaking news, I say that in quotes, up on Infowars.com, up on prisonplanet.com. We have it all up there. But if you go back to when this happened last year, how long ago was Benghazi? 8 months ago? Yeah, September 11th, 2012. So almost 8 months ago. And now it's all breaking. No, it's not breaking. Every bit of this was actually even in mainstream news. That the people that attacked, the mob that were called protesters, the protesters with the rocket launchers and artillery and anti-aircraft guns and missiles that attacked knew all the internal procedures and highly classified information that only specialized State Department security groups are aware of. And that all came out. because they were sent to kill everybody in that building, because right behind that building was a giant warehouse full of, and you can pull this up, the guys can pull it up for TV viewers, type in jihadist or rebels, Libyan and Syrian rebels show off heat-seeking missiles they got in Libya. Shoulder-fired, point-and-shoot, heat-seeking missiles, where somebody with about 20 minutes of training, just like a video game in an arcade at Dave & Buster's, you know, they got games where you can fire heat-seeking missiles, shoulder-fired. And it's the same thing. You turn it on, you aim through the reticle, it lights up. It says it's got a lock on the heat signature that you want to aim it at, because there might be a smokestack, you know, mile over here. You don't want to aim at that and click and, you know, have it ready. And you don't want it to be on, let's say, your own helicopter that's flying around. You want it to be on that passenger jet taking off. So the passenger jet takes off. It's at about 3,000 to 4,000 feet. It's coming over you. You look at it. You lock on. Right on its engine, and you squeeze the trigger. You don't even have to aim. Missile goes right up, hits the engine, blows the wing off. Heat-seeking missiles are missing from Libyan arms stockpile. What is that out of? New York Times. Yeah, show them the BBC headline, though. The loving headline about Libyan rebels, Syrian rebels show off heat-seeking missiles. That too is the New York Times. Yeah, it's the New York Times being reposted to the Seattle Times. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we're talking about here. And you know, I have reporters calling me up and they go, so you claim that the government put al-Qaeda in charge in Libya and Syria and gave them heat-seeking missiles. No, I don't claim anything. I don't claim they've come out in the New York Times and said, oh, the overhaul for your rights, we're going to spy on you without warrants now. And by the way, we've been recording everything you say for a decade, everything. Everything is recorded. And then they laugh at you on CNN and in the New York Times and say it's a good thing, because they think you're broken-backed. They think there's nothing that you won't put up with. They think that it is basically over. But it's actually more than that. We are at the critical jump point crossroads right now in human civilization and society, where there is a burgeoning giant real alternative media, bigger in the aggregate than the dying dinosaur corporatist, globalist, kleptocracy, crony capitalist, anti-free market, joker media, the sycophant media, the teleprompter reading media, the buggy whip media, the horsewhip media, trying to contend with the Model T. It ain't happening. All the king's horses, all the king's men are not going to put your fraud together again. No amount of internet kill switches, no amount of setting nukes off and saying foreign enemies did it and trying to resurrect a new dark age. Nothing you do, nothing. Nothing you pull, nothing you try, nothing you push, nothing will put the genie back in the bottle. Train left the station. Horse left the barn. Donkey ain't coming back. And the only question is, what are you going to do about it? What are you going? Well, they're going to try to bring in a police state and shut down the alternative media and you know, use spam filters to block alternative media. And all. It's not going to work. The people now know. The people now know. And that's why we're in so much danger, is because the establishment is used to being in power. They're accustomed to getting away with anything. And they are not going to give up power. They are going to continue to go for it all. They are not going to give up easily. And they are cornered rats. And that is why they are launching on every single front out there a full-scale, desperate Battle of the Bulge event. You got the United States and Allied forces coming in out of France, out of Normandy. They've now gotten up to the edge of the German border, and you have an all-out, desperate, Axis Nazi offensive with everything they had, throwing it at the Allies. But they had untrained people in the tanks and in the weapon systems, even though their weapon systems were better, and they didn't have the moral high ground. And they had the Russians on their other flank, and they failed. And you had people like Zeb Dietrich and others, you know, leading SS Panzer groups, drunk off their hind end, you know, busy lining hookers up, lining up the local townswomen. And it was just an arrogance. Once an elite gets an arrogance, even if they have courage, they can't win. And it's all over. I mean, I don't know how bad it's going to get, but it's all over for the New World Order. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. But it's going to get very, very nasty. It's going to get very, very bad. I can also tell you, I talk to high-powered reporters almost every day. I talk to government people. I talk to military brass. I talk to top generals retired. I talk to people, and they apologize to me every day. And they say, wow, you really were right about all this. It's worse than you say. I can't believe it. And you see, once people are no longer naive, once people don't have their own cognitive dissonance, once people realize they've been wrong, once people know how much trouble we're in, they're going to then see it all for themselves. It's not like people are tuning into Alex Jones's vision of the world. The White House, on record, ordered the stand down in Libya and pulled the security and then covered it up and lied about it so they could transfer heat-seeking missiles to Al-Qaeda, who they hired as the head of security in Libya, period. Alex Jones here, back live. If you guys will punch up my screen, I'll show TV viewers what I'm looking at out of the Express newspaper in the UK. Age of consent should be lowered to 13 to stop persecution of old men, says top lawyer, top barrister. A top female barrister has sparked outrage after claiming the age of consent in Britain should be lowered to 13 in order to stop the persecution of old men in the wake of the Seville sex abuse scandal. By the way, Seville on record now with foster children, very small children, under the age of 10, raping the daylights out of them in devil worship ceremonies. And in Florida, they're trying to change the law right now so they can, and the state is moving to let your 11-year-olds have abortions. Some states have done that, and also to give them inoculations. In Texas, they want 14. I mean, it's a pervert's world, man. It is a pervert's world. And this guy, of course, was top advisor to the Queen and Prince Charles, and bragged that he brought them special things. Yes, special things. Now it's just coming out, the unbelievable feeding on children. That's what national security's always been used for. In every culture, there's maybe 0.1% of the public that you could be described as vampires. They love to hurt children. They love to torture people. They love darkness. They always seek to get power, to be above the law, so that they can be protected from the town folks who would get the pitchforks and, you know, come to the castle and burn it down. And they call it lore, but if you study history, they would routinely burn down the castle in France or Transylvania or England, for that matter, saying the local lord had grabbed their children and eaten them or raped them. And you look at the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Babylonians, the Druids, every culture sacrificed children en masse because these psycho groups, they want control. So they end up getting in control of government. And then within a few generations, it's always temples with children being cut up and raped in public. And well, a lot of cultures like to get fires going. The Northern Europeans did this. The Druids did this all over Eastern Europe, Central Europe, Northern Europe. What is England today, UK? By the way, you can look this up if you're a new listener. They liked having big altars and burning small babies on them. Well, their favorite was also 5, 6, 7 because they believe the gods like the begging and the screaming, so they would tie you to a post too and burn you. That's why the Middle Ages witch burning was just a continuation of something, you know, they like to do. You know, just for new reasons now. If you practiced alternative medicine, they would call you a witch and burn you. Turned out it was satanic cults actually posing a lot of times as people in the church that were, you know, getting their kicks via that, and also raping and torturing whoever they wanted to. Because, see, it's not really a destination, it's a journey. The destination is the journey. It's getting there that's fun. This is the adventure. And it's about 0.5% that I would call flaming children of Satan who like torturing small children. And, you know, they need a national security arm. They need a Homeland Security. How many Homeland Security people have been busted by their own colleagues? It's got to be over 100 now. I see a new one every week or so at the highest and then even lowest levels with small children in devil worship cults, raping people. This is what they do. This is what they do. This is what they're into. You know, it came out with Bill Clinton that I guess, you know, he's not as dark as some. He likes to get, his thing is hot blondes, good-looking bombshell blondes, voluptuous blondes. You know, this came out. They settled court cases on this. And he likes to get them in a room, and he'll slap them on their ear, on the side of their head, so there's not a mark. He'll slap them upside the head, and then grab them by the throat. Please come in my office, ma'am. And he slaps them upside the head, and then grabs them by the throat, and he says, take your pants off. And if they whimper anyway, he goes, listen, it's okay, I'm going to kiss you. And he bites them on the lip, kind of like a badger, and until they bleed, snarling with spit coming out of his mouth while he rapes them. And he pins them down, biting them. It's almost like a ring in a bull's nose. He's a loving person. See, he doesn't like having the sex. He likes the raping. And so they want to rape you. They want to rape your bank account. They want to rape your future. They are raping your health with GMO, the vaccines, all of it. And you see, they're doing it because they like it. And all of you that are naive are letting these people, these pedophile armies, get away with what they're doing. Pedophile armies with nuclear weapons. The media makes a joke out of that. That's not a joke. The UN everywhere. You don't get in the UN Army. This has come out in court hearings. In an officer position unless you're a pedophile. I mean, that's who they are. It is an army of devil-worshipping pedophiles. We'll be right back. Because when you're in a culture of people that have been incrementally trained to accept incredible tyranny, people that are awake and aware are the bad guys. In a world of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Eric Blair, a.k.a. George Orwell. And, you know, I read mainstream British newspapers going, hey, you know, we've got this issue with these secret guilds of old men with little kids. Let's just legalize it. Hey, why not let your 10-year-olds sign contracts to sell out their future? Why not let them have abortions without telling you? Why not let them take vaccines? Oh, you're doing all that. And who's doing it? The dirtbag state saying the kids belong to them. And that's why I just saw that article up on Infowars.com, and I linked through to the newspaper. And it's just so upsetting to know that we're right about this, that historically history is repeating itself. And to know that it's these guilds of crooks that are infiltrating every institution. And that our naivete and our passiveness is the ether in which they swim. I'm going to get into Benghazi. I'm going to try to really crystallize Benghazi here. And then I want to get into what's happening economically. I want to really try to get into some of the other Second Amendment news I've got here in front of me. And then we have a loaded raft of guests. But I also want to give folks a chance, listeners. I want to hear from you. What do you think about Benghazi? 800-259-9231. 800-259-9231. And we will get you up and on the air here today. 800-259-9231. Do you think that this will bring down the system or at least bring down the Obamanoids and at least create some fear in criminals in government that lying could get them caught? Stuff like this is very healthy, what's happening. Or will it just be something Republicans score points with but don't actually restore liberty with? Because let me tell you, the crooks in Washington, they're not all crooks, but most of them are. And the higher you get, the more the percentage is. They do not want to open the real can of worms, because if Obama and his people start going down, they're going to start releasing all the info they know. What do you think the NSA is for? What do you think all these spy grids are for? It's so that they've got data mines they can go into every recording, every phone call, everything. It's been going on for decades. They now admit the last 10 years or so. Everything you've done the last 20 years is recorded by these criminals. Every time they did it, it was a felony. And again, it wasn't to keep you safe from Al-Qaeda. These criminals run Al-Qaeda. Oh, you're saying the firefighters on 9/11 did it? No, that's what you said, Hearst Publishing. The global crime syndicate inside our government did that. That's what tyrants do. 800-259-9231. But I want to talk about the human revolt against tyranny, and then I'm going to get into Benghazi and your phone calls. But first off, this is a news piece / produced promo ad. It's part ad, part, I guess you call it infomercial. But it really is something near and dear to my heart. I want to have a rebellion against Monsanto. A rebellion against them trying, Europe right now is trying to ban non-hybrid heirloom seeds. I mean, that's mainstream news. I mean, this is Twilight Zone. And you think, well, Europe's where they're fighting GMO. No, they're doing an end run around it, saying, well, you know, you can't sell these because it can't be taxed. They want a farming tax, just like a property tax is a feudal tax. All of this is about control. Because if the globalists don't keep you down, you'll build your own systems, and then they won't be in control anymore. They're threatened by Renaissance, Enlightenment. They are the old, staid, dark age trying to reassert itself. The New World Order is the old world order. We are Renaissance. You are Renaissance. We must live the Renaissance. We must struggle against the guilds. We must struggle against centralization. We must create real local communities and real sustainability to counter their false sustainability. People say, why are you always going and interviewing sustainable farmers and sustainable horticulture and sustainable aquaponics? And why are you always going and interviewing, you know, co-ops? That's communism. No, it's not. Having millions of people forced off their land into giant slave camps is communism. Co-ops are humans working together. Everything good they've made counterfeits of. Another big piece tonight about co-ops and horticulture and just everything. There it is, European Commission to criminalize generally all seeds and plants not registered with government. And then the registering is so expensive, all these thousands of old varieties of things, that no one can even get it certified, so then it's outlawed. Unbelievable. That's natural news. But let's first go to this piece, this Operation Johnny Appleseed. Let's go to this piece, and then I'm going to get to some really exciting news, something that is the key to victory against tyrants. But here's that piece. Many anthropologists and archaeologists believe that before man even discovered the power to harness and use fire, we were involved in agrarian activities. That is, taking the seeds of plants and then replanting them to produce more. The very foundation of our modern civilization and human culture is centered around the planting and cultivation of edible plants, fruits, vegetables, nuts, you name it. And the globalists have been going after gardening. They've been harassing people that have gardens in their front yards or their backyards. They've called for licenses for people to have gardens because you can't trust prisoners in the police state America to be able to grow their own food. That's why I've come to the realization that we need to become self-sufficient. You need to be informed. You need to have the Second Amendment to protect yourself. You need to be politically active to wake up others. You need to filter your water. But you also need to plant a garden. Even if you live in an apartment, you can do this. If you live in the countryside, obviously you can do it on a grand scale. There are so many green belts and areas that humans don't even visit, nearby cities and in suburbs, where people are now more and more planting their own little private gardens and meadows and off the side of the road. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a revolutionary act to unplug from the television, to unplug from the computer and all the globalist propaganda, and to go out in your backyard or your front yard or planters at your apartment or on the roof of the building where you live, and to plant a garden.
Here are some of the amazing deals at InfoWars Seed Center at InfoWarsShop.com. The Survival Seed Vault by My Patriot Supply features only the finest survival heirloom seeds for a robust and hardy garden, even in the toughest of times. The ARC All-in-One Seed Kit contains 70 varieties of 50,000 seeds of fruits, vegetables, medicinal, and culinary herbs. All ARC seeds are heirloom. Each type is labeled and sealed separately for ease of use and longevity. The Deluxe Emergency Seed Bank combines 3 of Emergency Seed Bank's top sellers: the Family Survival Emergency Seed Bank, the Medicinal Herb Seeds Pack, and the Culinary Herb Seeds Pack. We also have starter varieties of the deluxe seed packages for fruit, salad, salsa, peppers, and medicinal herbs and more. Go to the InfoWars Seeds Center at InfoWarsShop.com.
A little seed can grow a huge tree that produces fruit for up to 50 years. We have the best life bombs. That's what these are. We have the best weapons against death out there at the lowest prices, waiting for you to lovingly plant them and lovingly grow them and lovingly eat them and share them with others. We will strike back against the New World Order, and this is only one more initiative in our fight against them. So please join us at InfoWarsShop.com, or you can link through at Infowars.com at the InfoWars Seed Center. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back, and absolutely, InfoWarsStore.com or 888-253-3139. Incidentally, I held back a little more than 1,000 of the May magazine. It sold out faster than any other magazine we've put out. Next time I'm going to print like 160, 70,000 instead of 120,000. So we've held back. Now there's like less than 1,000 left. They have the 3 free bumper stickers in them to help get the word out and wake up others. So get the May False Flag, Boston Bombing Special double cover issue at InfoWarsStore.com as well. And get the Pro Pure Water Filters 10% off, promo code WATER as well at InfoWarsStore.com. And also be sure and support our local AM and FM affiliates by supporting their local sponsors and spreading the word about their broadcast or becoming sponsors as well. Now, I'm going to go to people's calls on the Benghazi front here in a moment. But first, I wanted to get into the spirit of resistance against hypocrisy and corruption. Here is an article. I'm going to talk about this with Lord Monckton when he joins us later in the next hour. Prince Charles attacks global warming skeptics. Prince uses speech at St. James Palace to single out confirmed skeptics like it's dirty, like he sets the rules, and environmentally unfriendly businesses. That means things not owned by him. This is a guy that has his own private train, more than 20 aircraft, and more than 30 palaces himself. There's something like 400 royal palaces in England, Wales, and Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Some of the palaces have more than guys, pull up the biggest palace, how many rooms? I want to say 1,000, but I'm going from memory on that. Some so-called palaces are up to 100 square miles. That is the land around them. So they're their own self-contained cities with generational families that live there as minions, disconnected from reality under these people. You can pull up an article. Prince Charles says the old should not take hot baths, and pensioners should have their natural gas allotment cut, but then they use government pension funds, you can look all this up, to heat the palaces. And there were articles about old people last year in England with their gas allotment cut off, driving around in buses with a bus ticket through the night so they wouldn't freeze to death. This is a guy who's a eugenicist who thinks you shouldn't have a standard of living, but he can live in palaces everywhere. So here's the article, Prince Charles. We're going to talk about that with Lord Monckton. And I'm going to pull those articles up. If you're a new listener, I'm not joking. They've said Britons, including old people, should not take hot showers or baths. Okay? I mean, this is total hypocrisy. Look at this article out of the London Guardian as well. Chinese officials sacked after citizen journalist exposes extravagant banquet. He bust in on a cop banquet in a city with starving people. They have thousands of riots a month now in China, conservatively. Thousands. The people are fighting back. And he bust in to show them with the most expensive wine and rare, because the elite always likes to eat rare things. Rare eel, endangered species, you name it. The police in there in lavish party banquets. And guess what? They have now fired them. Now, I want to go to this next piece to show you what people can do, exposing the hypocrisy. This has made big news with the little boy out in Las Vegas, Nevada, who saw the cop drive up on the sidewalk to go in and get a soft drink. I'm going to play that report and then comment on it after. But calling out hypocrisy and letting, quote, government servants, officials know that they're not God is what is going to get the bad ones out so there's only good ones in there. And so this is the attitude in China and here in America and other places of exposing the hypocrisy. This is what will bring them down. Let's go to this clip. A 12-year-old boy in Las Vegas, Nevada, did what all American adults need to be doing to keep our out-of-control government in check. He saw a police officer pull up on the sidewalk, go into a store to get a soft drink, and then waddle out. If a citizen would have done that, the cop would have written them a ticket or maybe even arrested them. We've seen many cases of people parking on the sidewalk and being arrested. And he says to the police officer, the public servant, are you responding to an emergency? Because you just pulled up here on the sidewalk. And the cop says, what are you, a lawyer? Let me see your ID. He turns it around. And that's what government does. It makes us all suspects under Homeland Security, under the fake war on terror and the fake war on drugs. And we never look at who the real suspect for corruption and tyranny is in history that our founding fathers warned us of: government and government servants. Because throughout history and in modern times, it is government that gets out of control and begins to dominate the population. So we wanted to show you this video. The young man shot the video sideways, so we're flipping it right side up so you can see it and follow along with it. But it's just an incredible illustration of how out of touch our government servants are, that he would try to intimidate the boy, claim that he was loitering, claim that he'd done something wrong, claim that he needed to, prove who he was, and wouldn't give the young man his badge number, which, by the way, is the state law there in Nevada and most other states that you're supposed to do that. So you have a cop breaking the law on multiple fronts for his convenience, and then trying to treat the boy like he was some type of serf or slave.
Thank you.
But within this is the essence of how we're going to save our society. Because most adults I know don't understand that cops can't do that unless there's an emergency. Most people don't understand that they have no responsibility to ID themselves to a police officer, even though they claim that you have a responsibility to, and have a lot of fake laws that have been overturned still on the books. So I want to salute this young man. And I want to challenge adults out there to do what he's done and stand up to this type of tyranny.
Hello? Is there a reason for you to park on the sidewalk? Is it like an emergency or anything?
Because I can.
Oh. Can I see your badge number?
Why?
Because I have the right to.
You do, huh?
Yeah.
What are you, junior lawyer?
No, I just want to see your badge number. Can I please see your badge number?
No.
Really? Huh? No, I'm minor. I'm Jeremy Drew. I'm Jeremy. I don't know, but is it an emergency why you can park a motorized vehicle on the sidewalk? Yeah. Yes. Because I don't think it's necessary to park your motorized vehicle on the sidewalk. No, I'm actually mailing this. Huh? I'm filming. Yeah. All right, well, can I see your badge number? No? All right.
So we salute you, Jeremy Drew. May you, a 12-year-old man, you are a man, encourage other men who have abdicated over their responsibility to stand up for the liberties and rights that our forebears fought so hard to secure. And in closing, as a newsman, as a talk show host who travels the country and talks to a lot of people and focuses on the news, I'm here to tell you, America and the world itself is waking up to government arrogance and red carpet hypocrisy, and the people aren't going to put up with the tyranny much longer. Look at Benghazi. Look at Fast and Furious. Look at so many other examples, the billions of bullets they've been caught buying, and the armored vehicles, and the training to take on the American people in a civil war. We don't just buy your denials and lies anymore. The sleeping giant has awoken. Now back to InfoWars Nightly News and Rob Dew. Okay, that was commentary I did last night on InfoWars Nightly News, and that's the type of stuff we cover every night at 7 o'clock Central. I skipped this network break so I can get to your calls on the Benghazi situation. It's just that whether it's in China or the United States or England, where they actually pulled it up, there are some British palaces with over 2,000 rooms. So when I said 1,000 rooms, it was more than that. And the communist Chinese former royal palace there in the Forbidden City has more than 9,000 rooms just in one part of it. So the elites can have their 9,000 rooms, and they're walled-off cities filled with, you know, basically sex slaves they grab out of the towns outside, but you can't have a hot shower. There it is, Daily Mail. One must take shorter showers, says Prince Charles. Prince urges British families to snub the bathtub, not take hot showers. See, anything I say you can pull up. Literally, it's incredible, all the stuff they do. Queen of England, it turned out, was getting billions of pounds in the last decade. This came out like 5 years ago, to heat her palaces, and they were taking the gas allowance for poor people. In England, it's cold, folks. They didn't have money for poor people to have gas. They had it, though, for the Queen to heat palaces no one was in. But he says you shouldn't take a hot bath. When England has more water than probably any other country in Europe. I mean, they're not trying to charge for water there. Not for the service, the water itself, when they have water coming out their ears. That's the type of stuff I'm talking about here. And then now with Benghazi. Again, I'm not tooting my horn, but I don't even really want to cover it because, I mean, what's the point? There it is. The Queen pleads poverty. Royal aides ask ministers for help with palace heating bill. That was just 15 million pounds for one palace. You can actually find the multi-billion-dollar or billion-pound, article. That was Daily Mail as well. Now expanding on all of this, but you need to go with less. Obama says, you know, if you're making $125,000 a year, you're rich. You need to pay more taxes. But he pays 18% tax. The average middle-class person pays over 40% federal tax, if you count Social Security on top of it, FICA. And then the big money guys, the billionaires, are basically all exempt because they write the laws. But that's okay because Obama spends $100 million per vacation. Biden, it's something like $50 million. You can pull it up. $100 million so that teleprompter reading Harvard whore lawyer can have the trendies all lust after him. I'm telling you, if GQ magazine told their readers it was trendy to shoot themselves in the head, they'd do it. I mean, hell, they got Gloria Steinem saying it's sexy to kill your kid. I had an abortion, and women are wearing them going, it's fun, it's my right. And they get into it like, yeah, damn it, it's smart. And it's the same culture. These are nothing but decadent slime bags begging for society to collapse. Criminals want things to collapse. They want to be caught at a subconscious level. Okay, I'm going to go to your phone calls. The question is, will Republicans just say it's a screw-up, resign Hillary? Like, may they get tough and call for a resignation? How about her arrest? Something like this could bring down the whole national security fraud system. Hey, they go or we all go. They go or your pension funds are gone. They're going to take everything because they like to do it. It's their nature. Don't get in a pit with 15 cobras. You're going to get bit. We either deal with them. It's us or them. I mean, I talked to reporters now, and I just go, I'm not going to try to convince you a jack squat. What planet are you living on to not know we're in deep trouble? They're all over the news saying they've recorded everything we've said and done for 10 years illegally, and they're smiling in our face. Every major vaccine has been found to have cancer virus nanotech packets in it. I call it nanotech. They're engineered, long-term, frozen, packed RNA into DNA fragments to be activated by hormonal fluctuations in the body. They're implanting us with soft-kill bioweapons, and I'm supposed to sit here and back off what I'm saying? I'm supposed to sit here and mince words? I'm supposed to sit here and play patty cake with everyone? Alex in San Diego on Benghazi. Go ahead.
How are you?
I'm all right, sir. I took my shots this morning. Go ahead.
Alex, I was just calling to actually bring up something real quick. I was to bring up that, I'm so sorry, I'm so nervous right now.
Just drink some fluoride, man. Come on.
Alex, I was going to mention the Republican logo, actually, real quick. And the
yeah, it used to be the stars were up, now the stars are upside down, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is something I think you should tackle. I mean, ask Ron Paul how he feels about that, and other Republicans. I mean, everything on flags and logos have meaning.
Yeah, no, well, it doesn't mean he's part of it, because the RNC flipped it 5 years ago or 6 years ago. I mean, it's just all part of, they think, they're saying we get negative power out of flipping. The star is the human body, the head, the arms, the legs. It's just a symbol of empowering humanity. It's an ancient symbol, a symbol of the stars, saying we came from the stars. That's the 5,000-year-old Egyptian equation of 666 sundial, okay? Now, they flip it upside down and say, we have dark power. That's all it is a bunch of wimps calling on satanic power, calling to be absolutely crushed, calling for Stargate of hell to open and swallow their soul into the ninth dimension. All right, ladies and gentlemen, second hour coming up. Second hour, Lord Monckton's coming up on big UKIP wins in EU and England, showing liberty is popular worldwide. Ron Paul's a rock star in South America. He just got back. We're going to get into Benghazi Gate. We're going to get into the new carbon taxes they're pushing, your phone calls. We're going to have the 3D printable gun guy now prints whole guns. He's coming on. We've got a lot more coming up today. Steve Pachinik on Benghazi in the third hour. Get his breakdown on that. He called it like it was day one. He said it was a hit on the ambassador because he didn't want to give missiles to Al-Qaeda. We'll see what Pachinik, former head of Black Ops for the State Department, on with us briefly. Let's go to Paul in New Jersey, then Tom, Jacob, Ship, and James and others. You're on the air, Paul. Welcome.
Hey, good afternoon, Alex. You're talking about the New World Order. It's been here for hundreds of years. We've been taking over since 1935. We haven't had a president for the United States.
Well, yeah, no, the War Powers Act in 33 put us under an emergency reorganization. It's a public document. They set up the state police that are really federal police. It's the second Reconstruction, and it's all admitted. But, you know, the average state police guy out there is just like the public. They don't even know which end is up. So how are you going to talk to them?
What I wanted to say is Al-Qaeda is a terrorist organization for the UN. The Federal Reserve does it all, and the IRS is a terrorist collection agency for the UN.
Absolutely a fact. It was set up the same year as the Federal Reserve. It's all in the charter. It's all official.
Mm-hmm. And the income tax is unlawful as it pertains to you and me. Did you know that? It was only for corporations.
Yes, sir, that's right. And it wasn't given to the general public until 51. They put it on the poor troops.
The UCC,
yeah,
Universal Commercial Code.
You know, since you raised that, let me say something. How the mafia would work, the Italian mafia, famously in New Jersey, New York, Illinois, they would come to you. This is famous. It's on record. And they'd say, listen, I'm not going to burn down your clothing or your grocery store or your bookstore. But if you don't pay me insurance money and hire my cousin, somebody's going to burn it down, and then your daughter's going to get raped. So you better pay me. And then if you didn't, it would happen. Now they just say, give me all your rights or Al-Qaeda's going to blow you up. So instead of it being Cousin Luigi, it's Cousin Habib. And it's like, you're going to give me all your rights or Habib's going to come in here and blow your butt off.
Hey, another thing I wanted to say. I was in jail, and one thing happened, and I was in jail with the Gotti guys. And the reason Gotti was put in jail was he was going to go into the drug trade. So that would cut in on the face.
Yeah, no. The Italians got too big for their britches against the WASP, the Irish, the Jewish mafia. That's always been the biggest mafia in this country. I mean, remember, there wasn't even an Italian mafia in the news till the 50s. They wouldn't even admit organized crime existed. They said there was lone gangsters. What a joke.
It's the government mafia now.
No, the government, the big banks run the CIA and ship the drugs in. That's public. And, yes, that's why they shut down John Gotti, is he wanted to, well, from what I read, he wanted to ship smack in, correct? And they didn't like that?
Right.
So you were in jail with them. What'd they say?
Oh, that's what they said. We wouldn't have been in here if Gotti didn't say he was going into the drug business.
What were you in jail in New Jersey for, Paul?
Well, I went in for the income tax, but I found out later they're trying to come after me again after I got out. And when I was in jail, when I come back, I was on parole, and they took me before the judge again, and I had a pocket Constitution. I said, "Hey, Judge, here's the Constitution."
Hey, why were they telling you all this stuff? Are you a fellow paisano?
No. But the judge said, "Don't bring the Constitution to my court." And you know what I said to him? I said, "Judge, you're a treasonous traitor." And he didn't like that. And he got all upset, and he told a prosecutor, send him for mental evaluation. Oh, yeah, they took that big music star who criticized the government. That's up on Infowars. They sent her for re-education. What's her name? Down to Butler, North Carolina. Yeah, Macy Gray. All right, brother, I got to go. Thank you, Paul. Tom, good to hear from you, brother. Tom, Jacob, Ship, James, we'll get to all of you. 800-259-99231. Folks, use as many drugs as possible. The government needs money. Thank you for joining us on this Thursday edition, this May 9th transmission. We're into the second hour now. Judge orders conspiracy re-education for Lauryn Hill. Singer told to undergo counseling over conspiracy theory that music industry strangles real talent. That's an actual quote, and they're now coming out in places like Psychology Today saying that I'm insane for believing in a new world order. They also have been saying now for 8 months that Benghazi, being prior knowledge, and a stand-down is a conspiracy theory. And you can pull up articles where in the British press they're calling for the arrest of climate deniers. First it was global warming was happening. Now that the Earth has stopped heating and cooling, they're just saying if you deny anything they say, even if it changes day to day, you're mentally ill and have to disappear off into a gulag. We're going to get into Benghazi Gate. We now confirmed what we already knew 8 months ago here on the air with our guest. Dr. Steve Pachenik, formerly of the State Department psychological warfare head, will join us in the last 30 minutes of the transmission. He said his intel was the ambassador, who was an Arabist, a Christian, trained generationally for 200 years to go into the Muslim world and proselytized. That's who they hired at the State Department. He came from a long line of Arabists, and he was in there, and he did not want to transfer missiles to al-Qaeda to be used against Syria. Heat-seeking missiles. That there was a double stand-down. That's why they fired like 10 members of CENTCOM, including the head of CENTCOM. Made them stand down. Because they were so angry, they followed orders and sat there for first it was 2 hours, then 6, some estimates 8 hours they stood down. Days before they begged for support. And now it's all out. It's all out. And we're going to go to Tom, Jacob, Ship, James, Mark. We'll get to all of you on your calls on Benghazi in about 30 minutes when Lord Moncton leaves us. Then for 5 minutes, we've got a guest popping in who invented the 3D printable gun that they're trying to ban all over the country. Talk about revolutionary. Technology cuts both ways, against the establishment and for it. I know that the good guys can become the establishment, and we've got to get used to winning. My dad, who's been a successful person in science and in business and in so many other things, always told me, he said, son, anybody can be successful if you've got decent intelligence and are willing to work hard. You can be successful at basically anything you want to be successful at, but you can't be successful at everything. You got to pick the things you really have a passion for, and you can be successful in it. And he said something else. He goes, losers would rather steal $1 from you than make $1 million with you, because they get off on it. They think that's winning. And the only thing in this world that has any value is your word, and that you be an honorable person. And he went on to say so many people he'd seen with high IQs
as soon as they started having real success, self-destructed themselves. And I have watched that so many times. People see it as selling out. If we, libertarian constitutionalists, 1776 worldwide as I call it, the ideas of the Magna Carta, through the Bill of Rights and Constitution, if we breathe life into that, we're going to have victory. And then as we have victory, people have to believe we can have more success. UKIP, and that's why Lord Monckton joins us. We'll get into the latest carbon taxes, Benghazi Gate, all of it with him. Lord Monckton, of course, served with Margaret Thatcher, who, of course, passed recently. People can bash her, say she was a globalist all day. I've talked to the Jim Tucker, who just died, who knew her. She helped shoot down Bilderberg, totally taking over UK sovereignty and holding up the New World Order 30 years. And they hated her and did dirty tricks. I'm not saying she's perfect, but people that I really respected said she was the real deal. It's like Reagan. He wasn't perfect. He got steered some wrong directions, but he said the 9 most scary words are, "I'm from the government, I'm here to help you." Look at Reagan compared to Obama. Look at how far they've taken us. Look at what they get away with now. And so you can talk about her passing. He was good friends with her and her top advisor in science and technology and the press. And, of course, his father was the Lord of Monckton and Brenchley, and they've now basically turned the House of Lords into a debating club. And people say, well, aren't you for that? Well, I'm for separation of powers. I don't like the fact that they're spying on the parliament and the bureaucracy stealing all the power and transferring it to the euro. But I tend to digress. The point is, Lord Monckton joins us to talk about all of this. And UKIP just had devastating victories in the elections in the UK, the local elections. They're having victories, and their idea of sovereignty is having huge victories in the EU Parliament. Even though it's ceremonial, the bully pulpit is bringing the bureaucrats who are exempt from taxes to their knees. So that's basically, for stations that just joined us, why I want to get Monckton on to hurriedly go over all these topics. But the fact that UKIP, coming from nowhere, founded by Lord Monckton and Mr. Bloom, who's coming on at the start of the next hour, Godfrey Bloom, and Nigel Farage, in a pub years ago, as just businessmen that didn't want to be EU slaves, and is now has Labour and the Tories apologizing and shaking in fear after demonizing UKIP. This is the example and the blueprint of worldwide victory that Lord Monckton has talked about so much. So I salute UKIP's victory, sir, and I've been ranting the last 5 minutes on a host of a flotilla of subjects. What would you like to tackle first, Lord Monckton?
Well, let's begin with that extraordinary victory in the local authority elections here in England and Wales, where the United Kingdom Independence Party, which had polled 3% of the national vote at the last general election, polled 25% of the national vote this time. An astonishing increase in just a few years. And I think the reason for this, really, is that people are now waking up to the fact that all the points you've just mentioned, they've been talking nonsense about the climate for years. They've been centralizing power in the hands of unelected people in the European dictatorship for years. And the people are no longer willing to stand for any more of this. The euro, the Mickey Mouse monopoly money currency of the European dictatorship, has collapsed and collapsed again. The European emissions trading scheme has collapsed now for the 6th or 7th time. I've lost count of how many times it's collapsed just this last week. The price of the right to emit a ton of carbon dioxide for the big businesses that have to pay it is now only $1 or $2 a ton, and the commissars have now realized that they are not going to be allowed to rig that particular market anymore to try and force the price artificially up. And that effectively means that the global warming scare is now over as well. And the reason why people have been turning to the United Kingdom Independence Party in such very large numbers, Alex, is simply that we have been right on all these things all along, you and I and UKIP. And we have said the people won't stand for having their democracy taken away. They won't stand for having Magna Carta in this side of the Atlantic and the Constitution at your side of it torn up. They won't stand for the national bankruptcy, which is being caused by massive over-borrowing, both in the United States and in the United Kingdom and in many countries of Europe. They won't stand for any more of this climate nonsense. We now want to get our governing class either to face reality or go and be replaced by a new governing class consisting of people who actually know what they're doing.
What would Margaret Thatcher, if she was still in her prime, be doing right now if she was seeing all this open authoritarianism going on? Benghazi Gate, Obama has Democrats all over the news saying your children belong to the state. It has reached a ultra theater of the absurd.
And that, I think, is what is so useful. Margaret Thatcher would have left the European Union in the 1990s if she had still been Prime Minister. She was already working on that when she left office in 1990. And she would have been very determined to see the back of the European Union because it isn't democratic and because it takes away national sovereignty and doesn't transfer it to elected hands elsewhere, but to unelected hands elsewhere. She was very conscious of the problem that as you transfer wealth and power from elected hands in those countries still lucky enough to have them, which doesn't include Britain, unfortunately, to foreign institutions, whether they be supranational like the EU or global like the UN, then you're always transferring powers to unelected organizations. So power passes from elected to unelected hands. Now, this, she always realized, was a danger to the very idea of democracy, which we acquired after 1,000 painful years of constitutional history, and which you took for yourselves in a few glorious years in the 1770s. And so she saw this threat, and she would have opposed it. She also, of course, was paying back the national debt. We were running, by the end of her term of office, a very substantial national surplus. In fact, we paid off half of the entire 250-year accumulated national debt of the United Kingdom when she left office. And the very next Prime Minister that came in threw that precious financial advantage away. And so she would have been exercising tight fiscal and monetary discipline. She would be making sure we were not printing money. Do you know that Obama is now printing via the Fed $1 trillion without any backing at all every year? That's the latest figure I've just had. It's called QE3.
And the inflation, no matter what they say in the press, is devastating. The prices are just exploding everywhere.
Well, and they're bound to, because, of course, if you've got 5 beans and $5, then $1 is 1 bean. But if you've got 5 beans and $10, then each bean is going to be $2. That's inflation. It's not funny. And that's what they're creating, and I think now creating it deliberately. It's not just a matter of buying time in the hope that some cheap fix will be found. I think they're doing it deliberately to destroy the U.S. economy. And we've seen this all before. It's happened time and time again in U.S. history, actually, with this.
No, that's Cloward and Piven. That's Cloward and Piven. We'll talk about that when we come back. They're on record saying, we will bankrupt you, we will shut your industry down, and we will make you go on welfare and make you love the government. This is the collectivization. I want to talk about the Benghazi Gate with you and get your take on that, because I know you've been following it closely. I want to get into the latest carbon taxes, Prince Charles saying we're not paying enough, all of it with Lord Monckton, and we'll give you his website, the Science and Public Policy site as well, URL when we come back. Lord Christopher Monckton's our guest. Scienceandpublicpolicy.org is Lord Christopher Monckton's very powerful website exposing the incredible fraud of the UN, the carbon taxes, all of it. It is the best website out there for all the scientific documentation and well-written articles. And you've got Mark Moreno with probably the best news site out there, the Climate Depot. And you got the best overall news juggernaut, able to force stories out into the mainstream, drudgereport.com. And then you have the factory of hardcore resistance, Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com, and PrisonPlanet.tv. Lord Monckton, this is your short segment. We got the next segment. I'll let you get out of here because I know you're busy. But I wanted to... You're a historian as well as an inventor and a scientist. I wanted to ask you this. There are periods in history, as you know, where more happens in a year than happened in the previous 20. And there are some periods in history in these trends where more happens in a year than happens in the last 100 in real developments. Now, with technology advancing, the singularity down the road, all of this, things are obviously accelerated. But we now have the spectacle of government corruption and corporate corruption and collectivist cronyism and crony capitalism naked, but they're just more brazen, more arrogant, operating criminally now in plain view, militarizing against us, and then getting caught. I've talked to top people. They killed the ambassador because he didn't want to give missiles to Al-Qaeda. What is going on with collectivists? What is going on with Obama? What is going on with the staged Arab Spring? Why put radical Muslims in everywhere? Why do all this? Because I know at UKIP you study this. What is happening historically? Because stuff has gotten so absurdist, I don't even know what to say anymore. Is it that the ruling class is smoking their own dope and has lost total control?
They have lost control. The ruling class is no longer a ruling class, properly speaking, at all. And they've lost control for two main reasons. One is that they've run out of other people's money. And the other is that they think like a hive mind. So once the party line is dictated to them, they will accept that and parrot it. They've been doing this on the EU here in the UK for the last 30 years. Now people are just kicking against it and not buying it anymore. But for 30 years they got away with it. They've been doing the same on climate change. They're doing the same on what we need is more international socialism, more power for the UN, etc., less power for individual nation states. And in particular, there is a very vicious anti-Western hatred in the thinking of the hard left, which forms this terrible hive mind, this dangerous consensus, as they like to call it, this party line, which they trot out. And the problem now is that the left have got control of the media. They've got control of course, Congress at the moment. They've got control of the White House. And this means that they can now, they think, do more or less anything. The problem is this, that the money has run out, and they are really, really scared, because they know that the state can only function if it can pay its way. And okay, you can pay your way by earning it, you can pay your way for a time by borrowing it. But what happens when people realize that they're never going to get paid back? And that's where the US economy now is. You see, you've got debts, as of the last count, of 17 trillion. I think it was 4 trillion under George Bush. It's 17 trillion now, and rising at a rate of $1 million.
Obama has spent more money than George W. Bush all the way back to George Washington in 4 years.
That's right, and it's getting worse, because they're now in that terrible inflationary spiral where, because they've borrowed so much in the past and they're borrowing so much more on top, the interest payments are now so large that whatever else you do, you've got to pay those or nobody will lend you any more money. And so they're having to start thinking about making cuts. And of course the socialists don't like to make cuts. They don't like to count how many beans make five. And now they're faced with the reality of having to do this. They're realizing that this is really electorally very unpopular. Obama's strategy during the first 4 years was he reckoned he could just about get away with it by going on printing and borrowing, which he did. Now he can't go on getting away with it for very much longer. The Chinese, who are the lenders of last resort at the moment, are beginning to worry about whether they'll ever get paid back. And they will eventually decide, look, you know, we can afford to cut our losses on the States by not lending them any more money. Because the Chinese are not worried actually about seeing the United States survive because they're a major customer. They're worried about the United States competing with them for natural resources. That's what matters to the Chinese. Then you look at the Arab world, where, as you say, very strange things went on. There was this hint of the Arab Spring.
Stay there, sir. Stay there. Short break, long segment coming up with Lord Monckton. Stay with us. I want to get your take on Benghazi. And all the miscreant nobodies that build their own empires in the government and red carpets and all the rest of the garbage. It's just, it's amazing. The more a society's in decline, the more the government worships itself with big aircraft and you know, royal uniforms and festooning themselves with red carpets. But then it's been hundreds of years since these politicians actually went on the front lines to lead a war. They send our boys off to do it. Final segment with Lord Monckton. Lord Monckton, what concerns you in the future? I know during the break you were telling me about a new article you've written at scienceandpublicpolicy.org. We need to post it at Infowars.com. You know, what are the dangers, but what are also the silver linings? What is the course out of? Because I said what you just said last segment in the first hour. Government and corrupt elements of it have never been more exposed, but that makes them more dangerous than ever because they are on the edge of losing power. They are on the edge of a major sea change, a new renaissance in my summation. Correct me if you think I'm historically wrong, but that is the great crossroad that we're now at. So what are the main threats, and then what are the main avenues out of this impending dark age they want to bring us into?
Right. The first thing is the main threat immediately to the United States is that you're running out of money. The government is broke, and not just broke, it's in negative territory at a very serious degree. This is now a serious problem. The dollar is already beginning to lose its status as the world's reserve currency. Now, that matters a lot because while it served as a reserve currency, it meant that foreign countries had large holdings of dollars, which effectively meant that you could print money against their holdings and pay yourselves more money even if you hadn't earned it. But that is now about to stop. And already secret meetings are being held between other major countries such as China, France, the United Kingdom, Germany, and various others about replacing the dollar with a different currency. The International Monetary Fund, which nobody elects, is proposing that its own currency, what's called the special drawing right, should become the new reserve currency. Of course, that would be no better than the dollar, frankly, because that too is in negative territory. But it's clear that the reign of the dollar as the mighty dollar, which everybody uses for their financial transactions, is already over. I'm going to give you one tiny indication of this, and that is that between China and Korea, there is now an agreement that they will no longer use the dollar to denominate international contracts between the two countries. Instead, they will use either the Chinese yuan, which is the foreign version of their currency, or they will use the Korean won. And this is the first of many such bilateral and eventually multilateral deals that are now in prospect and being done to dethrone the dollar, not because everybody hates the dollar, but because they fear that it's not worth anything anymore. Because there's too much of it being printed, not enough being done to back it up, no work being done, government hugely overspending, no attempt by Obama to rein in the spending. Everything is out of control, and the fear is that very suddenly, this can happen very suddenly, once the dollar loses its status as the global reserve currency, then you will get inflation like you've never seen, and it will happen more or less overnight. And so what I'm saying to people now is buy silver coins and buy them quick and keep them hidden, because you're going to need them when there isn't any longer a paper currency.
And that's why they're in a war against gold and silver, because it exposes that. You hit something last segment I want you to elaborate on, then I want to hit some of the latest climate news and let you go because you're busy. You talked about in the so-called left, who are really just authoritarians, because, again, I'm not even a right-winger. I'm just a constitutionalist who wants common sense freedom. You can call it whatever you want. On many issues, I'd be called, you know, a liberal 200 years ago. So these terms don't really mean much. They call themselves liberals. That's really a political cover. But you talked about their hate of the West, their hate of masculinity, even though they're mainly men, their hatred of anything pure because it threatens their criminal instinct. And that's from my study, and here's my question, is so key because you're absolutely right, obviously. Sure, you could say Obama's really CIA and he's playing the part of the left and they're going to organize things and they wouldn't kill the dollar. They wouldn't do this to America. But the truth is they have such a core hatred of this republic that they do want to see it burn, kind of like a criminal wants to be caught. And this is something we see in psychology and criminology. These are self-destructive lunatics. Even though they're in control, they hate those of us that live in the West so much, they want to burn it down. Lord Monckton.
Well, there is, I'm afraid, an element of very strong hatred of the West and of Christianity and of freedom and democracy and prosperity and capitalism and free markets, stock markets. They hate all of that because it was successful, and these losers don't like to see anybody else succeeding, so they want everybody to be losers too. That's their solution to things. And you see this, even in little ways. For instance, for a time, as you know, because I did this on a previous show with you, our appalling Prime Minister, David Cameron, who is going to go down as one of the worst Prime Ministers in British history, and also one of the shortest lived, I think, he tried to ban the wearing of Christian symbols such as crucifixes in public places. And, of course, you know, I went out and I was given by one of the people who came to my talks in San Diego a very nice St. Benedict's cross, which I've been wearing. And I wore it around London in Clubland, and the eyebrows were going up all over the place. What's he doing wearing a crucifix? And I would tell them, I'd say, it's because Cameron's trying to ban them.
And this is, and by the way, this is a global initiative.
This is not going to be allowed. And so I stopped him doing it, and not only I, but others stopped him doing it. But you see, there is this hatred of Christianity. He wasn't going to ban wearing of a Sikh turban or a Muslim burqa. Oh, no, no, no. Only the Christian symbols, only the symbols of the national religion of these islands. That's what he was going to attack. And there's this extraordinary self-destructiveness that goes right through our political class, and they hate the West, and they feel guilty about the time of colonial expansion. They feel guilty about the British Empire. They feel guilty about capitalism being successful. They feel guilty that we are not poor and other countries are. And they then manufacture this guilt about the climate as well, to try and say we've got to beat our breasts and shut down our industries to save the planet. The planet was triumphantly saved 2,000 years ago. It doesn't need saving again. But that's their slogan. We want to shut everything down. We want to shut the West down. And Obama is doing it in the simplest and most straightforward way possible, which is to borrow beyond all capacity of the United States to repay, to topple the dollar from its perch as the world's reserve currency. It used to be the British pound. We made the same mistake with hardline Moscow socialists in 1967, when eventually they had to devalue the pound, and that meant that the pound immediately ceased to be the world's reserve currency. The dollar replaced it. The dollar is now going down to policies exactly the same as the policies that our Communist Labour Party followed over here. And he is doing it quite deliberately, I think. He's doing it knowing the destruction he's going to cause. He doesn't care. He absolutely hates not just Britain, where he removed Churchill's bust from the White House as his first public act. He hates America too, and one should never misunderstand that. He loathes America, and he will destroy it if he can. And unfortunately, the electorate has given him a second.
And by the way, that's because any group trying to conquer wants to overthrow whatever the old power structure was. And I certainly don't romanticize older segments of the power structure in England or the U.S., but compared to these people, they were angels. And these people see anyone who's independent as a threat to their monopoly, like Kim Jong-un of North Korea, and it's that criminal instinct that drives them. And did you know they're telling Christians they can't talk about Christ or wear a Christian symbol if they're in the military? They are taking degrees from valedictorians in their own commencement speeches if they say they owe things to God when there's no law. The First Amendment says the government can't block you from religion, not that you can't in your own speech say you give the glory to Jesus Christ. I mean, why, in closing, and then we're going to let you go, Lord Monckton, why are they so diametrically opposed to Christianity across the board? I mean, they came out recently and taught the Pentagon, this is Fox News, that all Catholics are, quote, extremist next to Al-Qaeda. Show the Fox News headline, guys. And that all evangelicals, I mean, what is this? This is so absurdist. They're obviously the bad guys. They're obviously communists.
I'll tell you exactly what it is. I'll tell you exactly what it is. If you subscribe either to the Catholic Church or to any of the evangelical churches that are similar, they not only give you a body of belief which is independent of any socialist or communist or fascist group, but they also give you a personal relationship with Almighty God. And that means that you think independently for yourself. And that's the one thing they cannot, the hive mind cannot stand that. It cannot stand the thought that there are people who have independent thoughts, who say, we want to be Christians. We don't want to belong to the European Union. We don't want to have any of this climate nonsense rammed down our throats. We want to be free, democratic, prosperous people. They don't want people thinking for themselves. That's what it's really about. It's about total control. The totalitarians, this is the word that describes them. The Chinese, in early imperial China, used to call them the legalists. These are the people who are, we would call them now control freaks. They want to control everything and everybody down to the last miserable flickering poison-filled light bulb that you can or can't have in your house. Whether you can afford to turn it on or not is another matter. They want to control every aspect of our lives. They will not allow us to just get on with it ourselves. We have to be regulated and taxed to death. That is their sole shoddy ambition. It's an extraordinary nihilistic, destructive ambition. These are people who cannot create anything themselves. All they want to do is destroy what others have created.
Absolutely,
all
absolutely.
About tearing things down. That's their main motive, absolute destruction. They'll do it from within by subversion. They'll do it by commanding the government and the media. The media look the other way while Obama trashes the U.S. economy. The greatest economy the world has ever seen is now being brought low by one man in the White House who is not being held to account by the media, except for people like you, Alex. If it weren't for people like you, then it would have been all over by now. But
well, you too, Lord Monckton.
Some voices, while you're still allowed to broadcast.
Absolutely. People better appreciate. People better appreciate scienceandpublicpolicy.org. They better know about Cloward and Piven's strategy to bring us down. They better appreciate drudgereport.com, Infowars.com. They better appreciate WorldNet Daily. They better appreciate the few groups out there because we're having a great effect and others need to join us. And what shocks me, Lord Monckton, in closing, is you're saying all this stuff and it's all true. I mean, they say they want a post-industrial world. They say they hate fathers. Every show on TV pulls down fathers. This is a group of deviant scum, and I declare that I am free of them. And everyone else, we need to perform a mass exorcism on the West over the New World Order. These people are pit of hell demons. Lord Monckton, we'll talk to you again soon. Congratulations on sweeping to victory in the UK.
Well, God bless you, Alex. And what we're going to need to do now is to form our own international party of freedom to make sure that we fight back against this before it's too late.
Let's get you on the next month because I want to plan, and you've talked about this for years. It's starting to happen. It's time for Ron Paul to get involved and help lead it with you guys. It is time to put out our global manifesto against tyranny as a clear choice and get on the offense. Thank you, Lord Monckton.
Thank you. God bless America.
All right, there he goes, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, we either get on the march or it's over, okay? We either take action or it's over. Let's get Cody Wilson on. I'm about 6 minutes late getting him on. He's very busy. He's got another interview at 2 to break down what's going on. But Lord Monckton, newspaper editor, inventor, classical architect, trained orator, and high priest of climate skepticism. So he was just with us. Cody Wilson, the American law student and self-proclaimed crypto-anarchist, and free market anarchist. He's going to be joining us if we can get him on the line here. He's all over the news, BBC, AP, Reuters. They've got 3 states, New York, California, and well, it's not a state, D.C., the Criminal Command Center, trying to ban 3D printable guns right now. And it came out last week. He now has a little .22 single shot. And this is just what he's doing, you know, in his little laboratory with a couple of friends helping him here in Austin, Texas. And Cody Wilson, thank you for joining us from Defense Distributed. I'm reading here 100,000 of the .22 plastic gun has been downloaded by people. So that's got to be panicking the control freaks. They'll have to put on fancier costumes to impress us, Cody.
Well, and so they have, Alex. First, I'll say that the gun is actually chambered in .380, a little bit more of a pack than a pack punch than a .22.
Oh, I'm sorry. It looked like a .22 when I saw you shooting it. Yeah.
No, it's fine. You know, it's tiny. It's a good instinct. But, in fact, the people with the shinier badges have come down. As of 20 minutes ago, the Secretary of State and Department of Defense Trade Controls have demanded I take down the files from defcat.org as they assert information control and arms export control.
Is that breaking? Is that breaking right now?
That's breaking news. That's breaking news. DefCat is going dark now at the request of the United States government, Secretary of State, and Department of Defense Trade Control.
Okay, guys, get a Don Salazar on that right now to break that. Did you get this via email or a call, Cody?
Got it by email, unclassified email.
Can you read us what it says, please, sir?
Yeah, let me open it up for you. With the whole thing?
Sure. Well, yeah, start reading. Thank you so much. I want to break this right here on air.
I replied to DTCC case 13, blah, blah, blah. Dear Mr. Wilson, the Department of State, Bureaucracy of Political Military Affairs, Office of Defense Trade Controls Compliance Enforcement Division is responsible for compliance with civil enforcement of the Arms Export Control Act and the Arms Export Control Act implementing regulations, the International Traffic in Arms Regulations, and the USML. The AECA and the ITAR impose certain requirements and restrictions on the transfer of or access to controlled defense articles and related technical data designated by the United States Munitions List. DTCC is conducting a review of technical data made publicly available by Defense Distributed through its 3D printing website, defcad.org, the majority of which appears to be related to items in Category 1 of the United States Munitions List. Defense Distributed may have released ITAR-controlled technical data without the required prior authorization from the Directorate of Defense Trade Controls, a violation of the ITAR. Technical data regulated under the ITAR refers to information required for the design, development, production, manufacture, assembly, operation, repair, testing, maintenance, or modification of defense articles, including information in the form of blueprints, drawings, photographs, plans, instructions, or documentation. For a complete definition of the technical data, please see 120.1 of the ITAR, pursuant to 127.1 of the ITAR. It is unlawful to export any defense article or technical data for which a license or written approval is required without first obtaining the required authorization from the DDTC.
All right, Cody, stop right there, brother. I know you got to go in a minute. We're going to come back in the next segment. Finish that. Please send us that email to Adon Salazar. I know you guys, he's interviewed you. Please send that to him so I can get that up on the site right now. This is Breaking News with Cody Wilson. Cody Wilson of Defense Distributed was already scheduled on this show. This is breaking here right now. Cody, finishing up the email, but repeating what you told me during the break, you're saying, obviously, that there's criminal penalties in those codes they're threatening you with, and you were saying that's why you're complying right now and going dark. You've obviously been testing this. You've got the floor. Tell people what you want them to know out there.
I want them to know that the Department of Defense Trade Controls believes Defense Distributed has not established the jurisdiction to publish our information. The United States believes that certain information is controlled according to the Department of Defense Trade Controls, that they can assert information control over data or pictures, images related to anything on the United States Munitions List. So the department has demanded that I take down immediately for download the Liberator pistol, our 22 files, our muzzle brake files, our slide assemblies, our moderators, our adapters, inserts, sights. Anything at DefCAD will be going down because the Department of Defense Trade Controls believes it has authority to grant permission or license to put that data into the internet. I have to comply with this.
And how incredible is it that they can claim via import-export now that the web is worldwide? That means they can censor anything on the web in the U.S., claiming they have total jurisdiction over anything and everything in the world. That is, in essence, total tyranny.
That's exactly right. This is the claim of ultimate jurisdiction in the age of the internet, in the age of when I can design anything on my computer and send it to you anywhere in the world. They can say that my creation, in fact, not wholly my creation, that they have some ownership of that property. And even then, it's not even property, it's just information, which they have a partial stake and claim of ownership in as well. This is the logical end of authoritarianism.
And again, I was setting you up on the show just so you could talk about the fact that hundreds of thousands were downloading the 380 Liberator pistol. They were downloading the 22. They were downloading the 223. They were downloading all these designs. And all I can say is too late. I mean, but this is so amazing that they're saying you can't print a gun, but they can have nuclear weapons that we paid for.
Oh, believe me, I mean, you're not gonna find me disagreeing with you. I think it's interesting that the domestic politicians are interested in regulating your printer, and the feds are interested in regulating your internet and information. I mean, you know, leave them all to their devices. Believe me, you're not going to be printing guns anytime soon.
Amazing, amazing. How are they going to keep the genie in the bottle, though? I mean, there's no way they're going to stop this revolution from taking over.
I don't know, but they're going to try their best, which we should have predicted that they would. I'm interested in having this conversation, though. Is information able to be controlled in this way? I mean, I think they'll try their best, and perhaps I'll suffer some incredible consequences. But I think that 100,000 liberators were downloaded. A lot of those, this digital information, those are all infinitely copied or copyable. And the Pirate Bay, the world's largest file sharing site, maintains many copies of the pistol there already. I guarantee you that after DefCat goes down, that will be the place you need to go to get the pistol. And many people the world over will probably hear about the fact that it went down.
Now, are you going to shut down DefCab? Are you going to shut the site completely down, or are you just going to take the files off?
I just have to remove the files from public access, according to the request in the letter.
Is it a request or an order? Is it a request or an order? How is it worded?
It is a request, but we know how requests from the federal government work. I mean, it's a request.
Well, you're a law student, but you probably need to talk to a lawyer about this. I don't even know if you have to comply, but you've already been pretty bold. You're bolder than I would be on this.
Well, actually, the reason I'm complying is that not only did they ask that I take it down, but they asked that I then immediately submit commodity jurisdiction requests to see if they, basically I have to ask them if they have authority over my information, one piece at a time. I go, hey.
Stay there. All right, folks, this is breaking right now here on InfoWars Radio and InfoWars TV, and we'll have more tonight, 7 o'clock, InfoWars Nightly News. Cody Wilson of Defense Distributed, one of the main inventor of the 3D printable magazines and then a 3D printable 380 and other things, has now been, again, it's how they do it. Here is your directive. Here's the U.S. code with our criminal jurisdiction, but we request you then take this down and then come to us and file to see if you're allowed to do this. So they're opting to get you into their jurisdiction, which I have to say a little bit of international law. I read a lot of lawyers on this subject. I do not believe they have this jurisdiction, and if we comply and set the precedent, it'll say anything we do on the internet is under the import-export controls, which is what the government does with other governments, and is separate. It's basically admiralty law. But, Cody, I want to give you the floor for the rest of this segment. What else do you want to get across to people?
Yeah, this could be really significant. I would encourage everyone to communicate with that department, the Department of Defense Trade Controls, and the Secretary of State. Send them an email saying that they don't have control over the internet, because this could serve as a precedential case where any information you further put on the internet, especially related to firearms, comes through, let's say, a new bureaucratic channel that they'll set up here in the next few months to deal with exactly what we're doing. They're going to try to assert control over this unless people demand that they don't. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to stop developing and doing the kinds of things that we're doing. So if you're happy to let the United States become a social prison, that's fine. It's going to happen. We'll leave and go somewhere else if we can, but they're not going to stop unless you make them.
Well, you're right, and they always use these import-export groups to say, you gave money to somebody that gave money to somebody that gave money to a terrorist. We're going to take all your bank accounts in your house without due process. This admiralty law is out of control.
Yeah, we're probably going to claim a public domain exemption from the United States, well, from the ITAR registry, or the ITAR classifications. But it's interesting that the law is so old, apparently, that public domain for purposes of export still doesn't include the internet. I can release something to you publicly on the internet, and it doesn't count as that kind of release. For public domain purposes, I could only release something at a bookstore or a newsstand or a conference. These things count as public domain. The law hasn't been updated to reflect that the internet exists. And so they're going to use dead letter to regulate the future.
This is unprecedented, and governments have published mousepox that kills over 90% of the humans that come in contact with it, how to build it, how to make it, but they're saying you can't put out a file for people to get a 380 single shot to protect themselves.
Out of plastic, mind you. Made on a technology most people don't have access to. I mean, this is a direct attempt to assert some regulatory control over the future itself.
And they're using this arms import-export group. I've got the official letter. Thank you for sending it to us. We're going to get it up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com right now. You've got several sites. What's the most important site to follow all the videos and news as this unfolds, Cody?
I would go to DefCat and see that, look at all the things that you're not allowed to have. I would send donations to Defense Distributed. We'll likely need them. I'll probably be talking to a few lawyers for a few months. And I would also remind people that DefCat and Defense Distributed files will likely not be available for download for a very long time.
When is it going dark?
If you know where they are.
When is it going dark?
It's going dark right now. It's in the process right now. Haroon is one by one taking all the download files. I believe it's likely already achieved. This site has gone down.
All right, there you go. Memory hold, Big Brother, the new dark age, trying to suppress the Renaissance. There is the letter on screen. Cody Wilson, obviously stand by. I want to get the crew to talk to you. I'd like you to come in for the nightly news if you can do it. I know you've got other media, but if you want to come in for the nightly news anytime up to 7 tonight, they could go live. You're welcome. Let me say bye to you during the break. Godfrey Bloom, one of the founders of UKIP, is coming up. Then Dr. Steve Pachinik on Benghazi. If you just joined us, we had Cody Wilson of Defense Distributed, one of the biggest news stories off and on for the last year. We were the first to interview him, Don Salazar, here in Austin, Texas, when he had done a 3D printable M4 or AR-15/M16 223 magazine. Then he made the lower receiver. Now he made a plastic composite with a 3D printer 380. He also made a 22. And now the Defense Department, through Import-Export Control, let's put the letter up on screen if we can before we go to our guest, put this up. And I was reading the letter during the break. This just came to him about 30 minutes ago. We're breaking it here. It's under basically UN treaty. This import-export is basically complying with the UN treaty, saying you can't traffic in any small arm anywhere in the world, including in plans over the internet. So this is the type of garbage, and this ties into the UN treaty. So I'm going to have a Don put this letter on the web. We're breaking it. I'm going to have a Don put the basic blurb up at Infowars.com. This is big breaking news. I'm going to have him add to it. But this is exactly the type of stuff that is in the UN treaty. And they have no jurisdiction, but they're claiming it. And they want to codify it to actually make it law, because this isn't a law yet. They want to get the Senate to ratify the UN treaty, because what they're claiming here is what is in the UN treaty. You can't ship ammo around the world without their express authorization, the UN and your nation's import-export control. And Obama's saying he's going to use executive orders to stop American companies selling guns that gets into citizens' hands anywhere in the world to protect themselves. And they're going to stop guns and ammo from around the world coming in. This is all public. So I'm going to have that added to Don Salazar's article that's going up, the basic blurb and info in the next 10 minutes. It'll be red linked at Infowars.com with the letter so you can read it. But I have now read it, and they're basically threatening criminal penalties under U.S. code if he doesn't take it down, which they've now taken the files to the printable guns off the web, and then now he has to file and submit to their jurisdiction to see if he'll be given authorization. So he's filing in, waiving his rights if he does that. He's a law student. He's getting lawyers. He obviously knows not to do that. But I mean, he knew he was creating a legal challenge in all of this. It's like black folks going and sitting at lunch counters in the 50s and 60s. Well, hey, you're going to get arrested, dummy. They know that. They're pointing out, they're creating a case. They're pushing it. They're showing it's wrong. It's the same thing with having an armed march on D.C. You can argue and say it's a bad idea, but the Supreme Court's ruled you can't keep guns out of D.C. for law-abiding citizens, so they're challenging the city violating the Supreme Court ruling and the Constitution. Now, I'm not saying take your family, go to this. I don't like the idea because I don't want to get a shootout going, but I know they have the right to do it, and it's provocative. I like the idea of 3D printable guns, because criminals are going to get guns regardless. Now, joining us, ladies and gentlemen, from the United Kingdom is a guy I've wanted to get on for a long time. He's one of the founders of UKIP, with Nigel Farage, the rock star of liberty now in Europe and England, and, of course, Lord Christopher Monckton. He's a member of the European Parliament for Yorkshire and Humber for the United Kingdom Independence Party. He was first elected in 2004 and re-elected in 2009 before becoming MEP. Bloom worked as a financial economist. Godfrey Bloom is the president of the European Alliance for Freedom, a Eurosceptic pan-European political party. Godfrey Bloom, MEP.co.uk. And he is just an amazing, this is a founding father level guy, folks. The people that gave us Magna Carta, the people that gave us Bill of Rights and Constitution, due process, the people that paid with their blood, these guys are paying with their time and their energy, and I salute God. I think he might have been on once before about 5 years ago, but the point is, he's on with us now, and UKIP has just had huge victories in England. They're having victories in the EU. Liberty is really getting popular. This is history happening. So, Mr. Bloom, thanks for giving us a report from the UK on what's happening.
Great pleasure. Great pleasure to be on the show again. You're right. It was about 5 years ago. Very enjoyable.
That's right. I was saying maiden voyage on the show, and I went, wait a minute, I've had this guy on before because I've seen you in Parliament doing, debating these people. What is the state of the world right now? You're in the middle of the EU tyranny. What's happening with the EU? What's happening with UKIP? What's happening with Nigel Farage, popular worldwide? Ron Paul, popular worldwide? You're popular worldwide. Again, we're not bragging like narcissist egomaniacs. It's like a sonar ping. The fact that liberty is so popular and that personalities promoting liberty are so popular, what does that say to the plutocrats?
Well, it's interesting. An interesting development now is, of course, that the political class, who are class apart, who behave and have many of the characteristics of the old landed aristocracy of the 18th century, they are the new aristocracy, and they ride roughshod over everybody. And the divide between the political class and the ordinary people has now got to the stage that there's almost, we're getting into a sort of an electoral rebellion, which is what we've been working for quite a long time. And we broke through, the major breakthrough was last week in our local government elections, where we shot up to 25% of the vote. And that's taken an awful lot of hard work. But of course, people now are beginning to say, in times of recession, nobody goes to the barricades, of course, when they've got a full tummy and 2 cars in the garage. But times are economically very hard now for ordinary people, and they're now looking very much more closely at how they are governed. They haven't done this for some time, and now they're looking at this and they're saying, just a minute, we are being misgoverned by crooks and charlatans, and they don't like it.
Well, very well said. So basically, what I'm getting from you is that there is a global awakening happening, and you're really seeing it even start in England. What does it mean that UKIP has had such a huge victory in the local elections nationwide?
Well, this really is being looked at by everybody. It's a phenomenon, and it's based on people having the feeling that they want to reject the political class. And of course, this has also happened in Italy, where they did it a different way. They elected a professional comedian, which was very much their way of rejecting the political class as well. And of course, we're seeing the breakdown of the euro, the single currency, which of course was inevitable, which Nigel Farage and I have been calling now. Well, I was calling it at Cambridge University in the mid-1990s. Before it even started, it was deeply flawed. It was a political currency. It was a way of trying to jam down the throats of the people, a super state of Europe, which is based broadly on a fascist style of government, and I don't use that term as a pejorative term, which is often used, and it's just a statement of fact that there are 2 differences. Fascism is controlling the means of production, and communism is owning the means of production, and now we've got into a fascist state which controls the means of production. They're controlled by rules and regulations, of which we have 2,000 a year coming out of Brussels. 75% of the laws now of the United Kingdom are made in Brussels by unelected bureaucrats. That is illegal under our own constitution. It's illegal under our Bill of Rights of 1688. And it's also in breach of Her Majesty's coronation oath. So this whole thing has been illegal from the start, and it's now beginning to show. But one of the problems that we've had, and I know you have this problem in America, because I visit America quite a lot, and I have a lot of American friends, is that we have had a failed education system for the last 2 generations, where young people aren't taught what their rights and what their liberties are. So, for example, if you stand in front of a class in the United Kingdom, and I bet it's the same in America, and if you talk about the concept of the presumption of innocence, habeas corpus, the fundamental pillars of the English system of law, they will stare at you. They don't know what you're talking about. And, of course, that makes it very easy, doesn't it, to take liberties away from people if they don't know that they had them to start with.
That's right.
That, of course, is what's been happening.
A member of European Union Parliament, Mr. Bloom, joins us right now. Godfrey Bloom, we only got one more little short segment. He's got to go at the bottom of the hour. We're about to go to break, but I want to get this in here right now. What is happening, because you're inside the EU, watching it from the inside, how bad is the meltdown? What's going on with the open tyranny of the bureaucrats being tax exempt, the Frenchies being caught, the socialists not paying their taxes, but everybody else has to? I mean, how long can this craziness go on? What's going to happen with Europe?
It's already breaking down as we speak. It's already failing. Excuse me, I've got something in my throat here. It's failing. But of course, they're in denial. The Parliament, excuse me, the Parliament is in denial, and they're just pretending it's not happening. It's a bit like Hitler's bunker. They're moving imaginary armies around the Elbe, and I don't think it can last like this very much longer.
Wow, I agree with you. I actually use that analogy quite a bit. I don't have anybody else use it. It's true. They're moving imaginary armies around on the bunker, and it's not real anymore, but they are still in control. So when we come back, I want to ask you where you expect it to go, how big a deal it is, because people are like, well, why do we care of UKIP? It's like Ron Paul, folks. It's libertarian, pro-sovereignty, pro-family, anti-tyranny, pro-due process, and the media over there goes, they're fascist, but now the Brits and people in the UK are listening, and the people in Europe are listening and now mimicking it and going, no, they're real liberals. They're classical freedom people. They're Thomas Jefferson. They're William Wallace. We'll be back with a final segment with Godfrey Bloom, member of the European Union Parliament. Look, I know I got callers holding for like an hour to talk about Benghazi. We're going to get Pachenik on, but he'll sit there for maybe 10 minutes on hold or 5 minutes while I'm going to go to each of your calls, get your quick comment. Start of the next segment. Jacob, Eric, Mark, James, Ship. We'll get to all of you coming up briefly in the next segment. So let's get Pachenik on about 40 after or so, or call him and let him know that, guys. Or just get him on. He'll be happy to wait while I go to the calls. But finishing up with member of the European Union Parliament, Godfrey Bloom, it's a big deal to have people that basically are constitutional libertarians. I mean, sound just like Ron Paul, sound like me. You know, anti-globalist, exposing the Bilderbergs, to have them going from 3% to 25% to, and now having other parties imitating them and having the mainline parties scared. And in a parliamentary way, you had 25%, you win 25%. So they're taking over, and even mainline analysts are saying it, but Europe is collapsing. So you're an economist, you're an expert on this. In the 5 minutes we have left, Mr. Bloom, what is going to happen with the big central banks? What's going to happen in Europe?
Well, we have the problems here of debt, overwhelming debt that cannot possibly be repaid. The shadow banking system owes Germany somewhere in the region of £900 billion. That can't possibly be repaid. In the United Kingdom, we've just moved over £1 trillion, not dollars, £1 trillion of national debt, which is going up at 10% every year. Even since this so-called conservative administration took over, it's still going up at the rate of 10%. So it means the conservative, the so-called conservative, because they're not conservative at all, the conservative government is going to hand back in 2015 a national debt which is half as much again as the one that they inherited. Nobody is yet, either in Europe or the United Kingdom, prepared to admit that this whole post-war welfare experiment has failed, that you can't. We spend in the United Kingdom £200 billion a year on welfare. We borrow that money to pay young people to sit at home and not work. We import workers from Eastern Europe and other parts of the globe to work, while much of our young indigenous population is unemployed. It's 28% and rising. In Greece, it's 50%. The Iberian Peninsula, 50% young people unemployed. That isn't sustainable for any society. You can't have that number of young people unemployed. The banks, the Fed, the ECB, the Bank of Japan, the Bank of England are all printing money. That must end in disaster. We're going to have to get back somehow to hard money, commodity-backed money. We're going to have to get rid of the central banks, which actually manipulate interest rates. Old people are struggling because their savings aren't getting in interest rates. They're defrauding the savers in Europe. They're defrauding them. People who have led good lives, people who have led sensible lives, they've worked hard. They've worked all their lives, and now they're not getting any interest. And the country, all these countries are in debt. They're handing on huge debts to their children and their grandchildren. And I can't see, personally, any way out other than default. And that goes for the Europeans, the United Kingdom, and sad to say, I think default is possible in the United States.
And at Davos, as you know, their answer is bring in global carbon taxes to prop up SDRs, $100 trillion per decade, to give the very insider bankers that engineered all this even more power. They think they're going to get a total takeover out of it, so they're militarizing police and things. But I don't think that's going to work as the public just totally withdraws consent from them. I mean, I see a giant Ceausescu-type event happening over and over again. What do you see?
I see the same thing. We saw the Soviet Union collapse. It happened. I was an ex-soldier. I was stationed in Germany by and by. I saw the collapse of the Soviet Union. It happened very much quicker than we thought it possibly could. And I think the European Union certainly will go the same way. I think it's already happening where people are having their money stolen by bankers in Cyprus. This must come to other parts of the European Union, with bankers actually stealing your money, not allowing you to take money out. There'll be capital controls. You won't be able to take your money out of the country. And I think we're going to be looking down the barrel of a very serious revolution. I don't know quite what form it's going to take. I don't know whether it will be a violent one. I don't know whether it will be an intellectual. I hope it will be an intellectual victory for ideas of libertarianism. And I'm hoping that one country, whether it's your country or my country, will lead the way. We need to lead the way so people across the world can see that we can get away from this mercantilism. We can get out of the clutches of central banks, fraudulent and cheating politicians, and self-serving bureaucrats. We can do it. How it's going to actually pan out, I don't know. But it must happen. It's got to happen.
Absolutely. All right, Godfrey Bloom, let me say bye to you during the break. We'll be back with your calls and then Dr. Steve Pachinik on the Benghazi Gate situation. Stay with us. I'm Alex Jones. All right, here's what I want to do. Jam in a bunch of these calls. I've been holding a comment on Benghazi, then bring Dr. Steve Pachinik on to get his take on it. And then I've got all this other news. But the globalists can be brought down. When you stop acting like a slave, you'll start being a free person. When you stop acting like a slave, you'll start being a free person. I know our audience gets that, but you've all got to get really aggressive in your own area and really call bureaucrats, government people out, not just cops. Cops get all the heat because they're where the rubber meets the road. Most cops are actually awake compared to people above them. It's time to start engaging the city council scum, the county commissioners, the state reps, the feds, and getting good people in there. Because we're being robbed 1,000 different angles right now. Also, you know, I get so busy on air, I skip breaks, I don't plug products, any of that. We are funded by viewers like you. And also the materials we sell, all of it is stuff we believe in. The ProPure water filters discounted 10% off, promo code WATER, the big seed center, the best quality non-GMO, open-pollinated seeds at lowest prices, InfoWarsStore.com. The new magazine sold out, so I held back a little over 1,000. It's almost sold out. So we're selling them as individual magazines so everybody can get one, and we're holding back 500 for extra subscriptions. We've mailed out all the subscriptions for May, but we held back some for new subscriptions, but that's all that's available. Get a subscription or buy them individually or give a gift subscription. 888-253-3139, 888-253-3139, or, again, go to prisonplanet.tv to subscribe to see the nightly news and the video of the daytime show. And to support what we're doing, one membership is really 11 memberships, so you can share it. prisonplanet.tv. You are the revolution. You are the future. And we are the future because you've been supporting us. What's happening here is historical. And Infowars.com is now a worldwide fulcrum of resistance. And we're trying to build other fulcrums of resistance. We are a factory of attack ships to help foster and expand other people's capabilities in swarm operations against the enemy. And we are certainly having devastating victories. Devastating. But we're in a race against time. We are actually kicking the enemy's butt right now. But they're still in control of the command system. We have got to restore freedom worldwide. So, InfoWarsStore.com. Please support us if you believe in this information. Let's talk to Jacob in Wisconsin. Thanks for holding, Jacob. You're a trooper.
Hey, Alex. Huge fan. I spoke to you before about John McCain delivering the rape pills to Gaddafi people, like a couple years back.
Well, I mean, they made up that Gaddafi's people were raping people like babies out of incubators so they could actually go and slaughter everyone en masse. But, you know, John McCain is a piece of work.
Yeah, but the reason I'm calling on Benghazi, because it's kind of like a topic type call, but, you know, I just look at that and it's like, could any of that kind of be responsible for what we're seeing unfolding in this and all the, you know, the ambassador's death and everything? Like, had we not set up the no-fly zone and been involved in all that and the, you know, that spark of revolution, do you think maybe that would not have happened to the ambassador?
Well, they ordered security to stand down. They lied about the stand downs. They wanted him dead to cover up the weapons transfers. I appreciate your call. I mean, I just don't understand I mean, maybe I'm thick-skulled or something. But yes, the West went over there. I get your point about McCain. They brought the al-Qaeda people into Benghazi to launch the larger war. That was the head of the rebellion. Then, you know, after Gaddafi's killed, then there's a big weapons cache there of missiles. They've been ordering the jihadis to bring them all there and put them there so they could hand them out to who they wanted. And the jihadis, the head of security group for the entire city, went and killed him. And that was all known then. This is not all breaking now. We're right again. And it wasn't hard. It was all in the international press. It's like, man, Alex, you were right again. I don't want people to say, oh, you're so smart. I want to stop all this. But again, it shows they're not invincible. Some people are like, this has got to be another setup because, you know, because there's no way this would all be coming out. These people are just people like us. They're a bunch of arrogant crooks that think they're never going to get caught. James in Michigan, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hello. I wanted to talk about that treason in Benghazi there. Our forefathers had warned us of those entanglements. You know, I don't believe anything's really going to happen other than the dog and pony show. I believe Hillary's their baby. All these unlawful regulations from presidents past, including executive orders, all of them are in place for, I believe, personally, Hillary to run in 16 is first woman.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Hillary is a deep witch, CIA since college with Clinton over in England. That's all been declassified. A total witch. She was under Cordmeyer. And the Republicans are acting like they dropped the ball. They didn't drop the ball. The Republicans are supporting al-Qaeda attacking Libya and Syria as well.
Exactly, and what's going on here, I totally agree with Moncton. These people, they want to be the intercessors between God and man. They don't want us to have a personal relationship. One other thing before the next Info Warrior, I'd like to plug our video. It's on YouTube called A Dream Revered. Look for it, and God bless.
God bless you. Yeah, we've closed out the contest, but if you haven't heard us post your video or talk about it, be sure and get it to us in email again. We've had over 400 videos come in. One of them deals with a home invasion. It's a pro-Second Amendment video, very powerful, that you should send anti-gun people. That's up on my Twitter account, Real Alex Jones, but extremely, extremely important information. Okay, let's go to Mark in New Jersey. You're on the air, Mark.
Yeah, Alex.
Yes, sir. You're on the air.
Okay. I got a couple things to say. One of them is definitely this Benghazi. I see this as an open door where we can get our foot. If we can get our politicians, representatives, whoever, to push to get this, I mean, to really get this out in the open. This poor guy, Gregory Hicks, he looks, I mean, just watching them, they are shooken up. But this is their friends that they're trying to back, and they know that they're next.
Oh, yeah, they were ordered to stand down over those 6 to 8 hours so they could all be killed to cover up the weapons transfer. And now it's mainstream news today that our government and NATO is open. The main force now in command in Syria is al-Qaeda. Here's the headline: Al-Qaeda now in control of CIA's covert war in Syria, and they have heat-seeking missiles. And here's the deal. When they shoot down our aircraft with those missiles, we'll be called conspiracy theorists for pointing out our government transferred it to them. Good points. I appreciate your call. Yeah, no, this could bring them down. I mean, Nixon was an angel compared to this. He went to jail for, breaking into some places. This is amazing. And I want to go to Dr. Steve Pieczenik because, he was the head of psychological warfare and hostage negotiations. He helped do the Camp David Accords, one of the most famous negotiations ever, the only successful real Middle East peace until the assassination of the leader of Egypt. And, of course, he was one of the founders of Delta Force with General Boykin and been involved in a lot of black ops and been involved in overthrowing governments, if you're a new listener. He is here now with us, Dr. Steve Pieczenik. And I want to get, because back when all this happened, he said basically they took him out. It was a stand down. Same deal. Let's move on. That's what Colonel Schaefer said. That's what all my other sources have said. Now it's all been confirmed. A, what really happened in Benghazi in hindsight? B, where is this going? How big is it? And is Cheney running defense for Obama, saying, oh, they dropped the ball, they're idiots, they should get in trouble? It didn't look like to me they dropped the ball. Or was it a false flag against the White House by another internal group, but then the White House couldn't have done that because they were in control? I mean, they weren't all just sleeping. So, Dr. Pieczenik, what do you think really happened?
Well, it's what I said a long time, Alex. It's a pleasure always to be on. It's basically a palace coup. This was an attempt by John Brennan, who illegally used what was called a paramilitary SOCOM command, that Southern Command soldiers that were offline. Offline meaning that it was not authorized through the DCI, Directed Central Intelligence Agency, who was General Petraeus. It was an attempt to get General Petraeus out when we said to you, and I said a long time ago to your audience, there is a war going on between the civilian CIA and the military intelligence General Petraeus was put in order to control the civilian CIA. He could not do that. They want to get rid of him. General Petraeus had wanted to arm the Syrian guards. However, he did not know about this entirely illegal organization that was authorized directly by the President of the United States to run an illegal covert operation. In other words, that put Obama in line of impeachment through John Brennan, who was not an authorized elected official, but an appointed one who had worked for Bush Jr., who ran an illegal SOCOM unit in a unit that was called the embassy but was not, where they tortured al-Qaeda prisoners and used it as a transfer point for the armament. And I said it a long time ago. And at that point, there was a stand-down issue. There were military generals, AFRICOM, General Ham, who wanted to go in. He was told to stand down. He stood down. A rear admiral, who I told you the 7th Fleet, was told to stand down. He stood down. And then 14 other Navy officers were decommissioned. And the DCM of the embassy, who correctly said this is the first time Foreign Service officers had more balls than the military. I am ashamed of what the military did not do. This was an illegal act. The president should have been impeached. This is not just a small cover-up. This has nothing to do with Republicans, Democrats, or security operatives. I happen to know all the individuals exceedingly well. Let's go through the a board that oversaw.
By the way, let me just stop you briefly for people to understand.
And with me, and Tom has had an impeccable reputation, but he's a company man, and he lied. On that board, he lied. He knew very well this was an illegal operation. This was an operation to cover Obama, and Hillary Clinton was directly responsible for what went on because that consular officer had nothing to do but keep the consulate intact. It had nothing to do with regional security officers. And, in fact, the regional security officer who testified in front of the Senate was correct. This is not about more regional security officers. This is about better capability. And the CIA destroyed Petraeus. Petraeus was furious. And at the same time, our friend, again, Mueller, who illegally leaked out a lot of this information, got rid of Petraeus, and the military really did not come forth. General Dempsey is to be condemned for this because he had authorized the stand down from President Obama, who now is guilty of being a very inappropriate, incompetent military commander-in-chief. Listen to what I said before. I said before he was an incompetent president who was not qualified to run as president. Now I am accusing him of being an incompetent military commander-in-chief. According to the laws of military law and order, he can be qualified for military tribunal and impeachment for having done what he did, for allowing our men to die in the field of battle. Now, I happen to know the head of the NSA. I know for a fact that Keith Alexander ran 2 UAVs all the time, so they knew exactly what was going on. However, if you look back into the history, General Dempsey lied in the beginning with the Susan Rice story, saying that, in fact, there was this video that went viral, and it was General Dempsey who first said it. He should have been indicted from the moment. I kept saying that for years. He should have been indicted. So who was on the committee? On the committee to evaluate this was Admiral Mullen, again, another incompetent admiral and military officer who gave us the false flag and both the nonsense about SEAL Team 6 killing Osama bin Laden. I told you I knew his father, who had worked for William Morris. So you have incompetent generals who are self-aggrandizing, no longer perform, and have nothing to do with our national security. The Board of Overseers indicts specifically Hillary Clinton must be indicted, and a guy named Patrick Kennedy. Patrick Kennedy worked for me as an assistant administrator under Eagleberger, under Carter, under Reagan, under Bush. He's a very competent, he was a nice guy, but he is lethal because the Undersecretary for Management, as it was brought out by the DCM in the Senate hearings, was absolutely correct. Patrick Kennedy controls both the allocation of resources and controls everything in terms of disposition. Because when I had to go overseas and I had to take out Noriega, and I had to come back to Patrick Kennedy and give my administrative numbers, and I said, I don't have any receipts, and he said, well, what happened? I said, I was being chased, and, my life was in line. He said, well, you got to pay me back in the government. That was Patrick Kennedy, the Uriah Heep of the State Department. He has to be investigated. Pickering has to be investigated. Hillary Clinton. Now, the key element here is Eric Boswell, who was the Secretary of the Assistant Secretary of Diplomatic Security. I've known him since the day of Eagleberger. This is a very straightforward, honorable man who took the sword for Hillary Clinton and Patrick Kennedy. They go back 30 years. And in turn, the two took the lies on behalf of Tom Pickering. So you have a foreign service that did not act appropriately with regards to the DCM who was on the ground, with regards to an ambassador who was an outstanding ambassador and had nothing to do with the excellent regional security officers. What this was a coup attempt to take out Petraeus, to take out the military from running the CIA and covert operatives that no one knew about and were not even on the books authorized by President Obama, by Biden, Donlin, and all of the...
So it's about covering up a CIA secret army with jihadis and al-Qaeda. It's about covering up a secret al-Qaeda army.
Because the DCI knew about the al-Qaeda. He was running that unit. This was even beyond that, if you can believe double secret probation, Alex. This was the unit that was created way beyond anything to do under the jurisdiction of Petraeus. This was a unit that we call way offline, that had to do with special officers, special forces on contract, which was really off the books. It's so illegal, I can't even tell you. I worked off the books. Once you work offline, you don't get paid, you don't have anything. I've never been paid. But if you're captured, you have no official cover. John Brennan was authorized to do that by the President of the United States.
Was Blackwater involved? Was Blackwater involved? Because I know they were heavily in that area.
I'm sorry?
Did you you came on 2 weeks after it happened and said all this. Same thing you're saying now.
It's all of it. Nobody believed me, but the one who did believe me, besides you, was Rupert Murdoch and the New York Post and Fox. And I'll tell you why. Rupert Murdoch ordered a book called Benghazi Dispatch. And in that dispatch, in a book done by William Morrow, he described it to the detail. So where there were those who picked it up very quickly, like yourself, and you got to give the Fox News the credit as well as you to keep on the story because they wouldn't let it go. And they were correct. This is not just a cover-up. This makes Watergate look like baby stuff. This makes Clinton impeachment looks like nothing.
All right, I want you to talk to me like I'm 5.
Criminal offense committed by the President of the United States, Hillary Clinton, and John Brennan, and General Dempsey.
Doc, I got to go to break. I know you have trouble hearing me, but
the price for this.
I got to go to break. I want to come back. I want you to talk to me like I'm 5 years old. I mean, I want you to break down the whole story, why they did it, where you think it's going, because they've been caught. How big is this? I mean, this is incredible. A double-secret al-Qaeda army giving them missiles. This all came out with our guests, Pachenik especially, but Colonel Schaefer and others. And it was clear. I mean, the al-Qaeda forces knew right where to hit. It was the group they hired for security. Of course, it wasn't a video that did it. And so explain to me slowly, because I know you did it back when it happened, but now with all the new info, why do something this crazy? How did they think they'd blame Petraeus, who you predicted they'd go after before they did a couple of years ago here on the show? You said there was a fight between the civilian CIA and the Pentagon. And then now, where does this go? But explain it to people in just boiled down layman terms, what this compartmentalized group did and why they wanted the ambassador dead, and again, where this goes now.
The real issue, it's very simple, really. You got to think of two elements of the government fighting each other that are covert. The government is never unified. It never has been unified. For over 30 to 40 years, there's always been a conflict between the CIA and the military and the CIA and the FBI. You just saw that conflict of the CIA and the FBI in the Boston Massacre, where there was no sharing of information. The CIA has been run for the past 50 years by civilians who have been out of control. Eisenhower warned us about it and called Legacy of Ashes. He told Allen Dulles, you've got to shut down this CIA. It's creating a disaster. Jimmy Carter tried to get rid of 4,000. Reagan brought them back in. These are guys who are really not trained in very well in either human or in paramilitary units. But what they did was under Panetta, under John Brennan, who was not really an operative but came out of the investigative report, they started to create paramilitary units that infringed on the military. In other words, they started to do drone warfare, which was illegal, and Obama was brought up on that charge. They started to kill thousands of people that were illegal, both in Yemen, Somalia, and Pakistan. They started to create a civil war in Pakistan between the Pakistani Army, ISI, and the CIA, but they didn't say anything. And our legislators allowed this to happen. In the meantime, Hillary Clinton went around the world in 168 countries, had nothing to do, was totally incompetent, and really was allowing all of this to be run between John Brennan in the White House, who was only appointed. He was not elected. And John Brennan has been there since Bush Jr., since Clinton. So it goes all the way back to Clinton, back to Hillary Clinton. And John Brennan ordered a very secret unit that was never even registered or on the books, which is called offline, off the books, as Hicks said, the DCM. And basically that unit was used to create another counterforce against Petraeus and his CIA and his al-Qaeda units, which were legally charged with creating arms shipment into Syria. In other words, the legal covert arm that Petraeus was doing was being undermined by a unit that he knew nothing about. He was blindsided purposely by John Brennan, the President of the United States, Obama, and including his Vice President, Biden, and all the people in the White House in order to get rid of Petraeus and the military overseeing of the CIA. And what happened is at the same time that the Benghazi occurred, which was really not even an embassy, it was a consulate unit where they tortured people and terrorists, so-called terrorists, and were shipping guns at the same time. The ambassador happened to be a target of opportunity. He was not really the actual target intended. He was killed on a sideline, as was the DCM, who said it very clearly this was a terrorist attack.
All right, Doc, stay there. We got to go to break. I'm going to go into overdrive for at least 20 minutes here with Dr. Steve Pachenik. And then after that, your phone calls for folks that have been patient. But this has all come out. This is no longer Pachenik 7 months ago saying this. It's all confirmed, folks. It's incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now into the 4th hour of Overdrive. Dr. Steve Pachenik's our guest. And he was breaking down what really happened in Benghazi. And now it's all out in the open. Finish up what you were getting into about what happened there. In the next long segment, I want to get into what the political ramifications of this means, because they're now on the news saying, we listen to everything you do, and we've been recording everything for 10 years. That's just admitting felonies. And they're back on the news going, we do torture, and it's okay. And we're taking $85 million a month from you. And it's like when criminals, I've studied psychopaths, I know you're a psychiatrist, after they've gotten away with like 20 murders, they start getting real reckless. I guess at a subconscious level, they want to be caught. I'll let you, the psychiatrist, explain it to us in the next segment, or tell me if you disagree, but it does seem like they've gone completely insane. And Hillary throwing fits going, what difference does it make? I mean, these people would be a joke if they weren't so dangerous.
You're correct, Alex. The real issue is, and I've said it for years, Hillary Clinton is a very dangerous individual. To say she's a sociopath is undermining. She's really Borgia. I mean, she has evil personification as well as Clinton. This is a very dangerous individual. The fact that she happens to be a woman is irrelevant. The deaths that she has from foster on otherwise outward is really irrelevant. She should have been indicted and put in prison a long time ago. She was culpable. She's directly culpable because she knew exactly what happened. In order to cover up this palace coup against Petraeus, they used the State Department, and they used the very people whom I knew. In particular, they used a guy by the name of Patrick Kennedy, who worked for me. He's now the Undersecretary for Management. Now, to say an Undersecretary of Management at State is talking about an individual who can manipulate all the funds, all the positions, and all the careers that's involved. So the DCM in Libya was absolutely correct when he said everything, that nobody really questioned him. They try to keep him quiet, and Patrick Kennedy really tried to threaten. Patrick, I've known since he was a kid. He worked for me. But he's very much of a Uriah Heep and very Machiavellian. You don't get to the top after 30 years unless you really play the system. In turn, his boss was really Tom Pickering, who was asked to be on a committee to oversee this entire lie where Brennan was trying to take out Petraeus, where, in fact, politically we were getting into very serious problems of arms shipment into Syria, which Petraeus had wanted, I was against, Hillary Clinton wanted, I was against, but Brennan undercut everybody at the same time, not because it was for political reasons, it was for personal reasons. So for two reasons at the same time, both an illegal shipment of arms and an illegal undercutting of our own DCI. That's the
sure. How does doing that undermine Petraeus? We know they got rid of him after that. The FBI was illegally spying on him.
Now we get Mueller in here. Now, don't forget, Bob Mueller has also been implicated in the Boston Massacre. Remember what I said? He was the Assistant Attorney General in Massachusetts for counterterrorism. He knew all about the governor, who was one of his law partners. He was in charge of counterterrorism in Massachusetts. He knew exactly where the CIA had come in. He knew exactly that the Russians had asked the CIA repeatedly as to where it is. So Mueller, once again, is involved in undercutting one of our operatives, in other words, the director of the FBI. So again, you have these criminals who are continuously overseeing so-called national security. That's Obama, Biden, Brennan, Mueller, Hillary working in concert. But this time they bring in a Tom Pickering who had all the accoutrements of a great ambassador, and I personally liked him. I wrote a nice blog about him, but I was totally disappointed because he besmirched his reputation, his integrity.
Incredible, Doc.
And he lied because he said this was just a problem of regional security officers. It had nothing to do with
and they've been caught lying everywhere. We got to go to break. We're going to come right back. You'll have the floor to break down where this goes now. I mean, this is incredible, folks. This is a meltdown of biblical proportions. This is real what you're seeing. Well, in that last 3-minute break, Dr. Steve Pachinik, former head of psychological warfare operations for the State Department, trained and knows many of the people that are involved today, what he laid out, and I study it every day. I've got all the pieces. He's dead on, but he doesn't just see it like I do from the outside. He knows it. And everything he told us back 7 months ago, a few weeks after this happened, has now been proven. How will the system survive? I mean, I don't think the Republicans can just try to score political points here and say, oh, they screwed up. This is something that makes what Nixon did pale in significance. Dr. Pachinik, can you repeat what you said during the break about what this signifies, where it's going, what needs to be done, And I said, you know, maybe they're going to stage a new false flag. You said another Boston massacre won't do it. So get into all of it right now, Dr. Steve Pieczenik.
All right. What this is far more serious than a Watergate. This is the Watergate on steroids for Obama. Obama must be stopped and impeached. There has to be a special prosecutor assigned and to investigate Obama's involvement in both this, Osama bin Laden, but in the Benghazi affair, the illegalities that were involved, as well as John Brennan, Dempsey, and Pickering and Hillary Clinton. It has to be an independent prosecutor. It cannot be a legislator. The legislators were co-opted, in particular Dianne Feinstein, Nancy Pelosi, and others. I question Esai as well because many had to know what was happening on. Secondly, they have to release the secret documents that were done on the investigation. They're not secret. They do not affect the national security. Thirdly, Dempsey has to be evaluated by a court of military justice for illegal activities committed against his own men and for the stand down. Every general who stood down and every Navy admiral who stood down has to be investigated under military tribunal law, as well as every special forces unit that was used illegally by military law and prosecutors. Everyone below the level of the general, at the colonel and major level, can and refuse any commands from the commander-in-chief. What I'm saying, in effect, is you can now disobey the commander-in-chief because he has committed a crime, and a crime against his own soldiers and American people. The last point is that all of these people have to be indicted, have to go to prison, otherwise our system will break apart. What is happening politically on the geopolitical level is that once again the CIA, Petraeus, unfortunately, and Hillary, and now William Burns of the State Department have decided to arm the Syrian opposition, which is really nothing more than Wahhabis from Saudi Arabia, from the Saudi princes who are totally corrupt and inefficient, who have been propped up by the CIA for over 30 years to take down Bashar Assad. They will not take down Bashar Assad. The Russians will help them. The Iranians will help them. The Chinese will help them. The war will continue. This was initiated by the CIA. This was initiated by Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Kingdom of Jordan. Israel attacked as it needed to attack, but really doesn't have a stake in the game other than to keep out of this and make sure that Hezbollah doesn't take armament. So we're heading into a potential third world war thanks to all of the disaster of an incompetent criminal president, an incompetent criminal vice president, incompetent John Brennan now is the CIA director, an incompetent chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, an incompetent Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and questionable competency of John Kerry. And that means that the American public now has to say we had enough, and either we have an election, an immediate election, and a recall, and a massive impeachment request for the special prosecutor. This is way beyond Watergate. This is way beyond anything that Bill Clinton did, as much as I despise him. But this does indict the Secretary of State, the President of the United States, the Vice President, the Director of the CIA now, John Brennan, and all of the men involved in the Special Forces unit that was an illegal unit, as well as all the military generals who stood down and the rear admirals must be evaluated by the commanding officers or officers below them in a military court of tribunal and tried for disregard of military arms procedure. And the State Department has to be stripped of Pat Kennedy, of the Secretary of State. Kerry has to be questioned. He's totally incompetent. Pat Kennedy must be thrown out. Eric Boswell must be questioned because he was in charge of the regional security officer. And there must be a release of the secret data.
And that's starting. That's starting. Dr. Pieczenik, that's starting. They're dragging them all in, as you know. Let me ask you this question, because you know all these people. You ran the State Department, ran major sections, ran the operations at Camp David. So let me ask you this question. If they were trying to embarrass Petraeus, it all blew back on them. They got Petraeus. That's all come out spying on him. There's this internal war over the power that the founders counted on to keep total tyranny from coming in, the separation of powers. It's saving us again. What do you expect to get done? I hear you saying what needs to be done. I agree with you. What do you expect them to do? Because they're not going to be able to put this back in the bottle of this genie. I believe they will stage false flags.
Well, they will keep stalling it and focus on totally irrelevant issues like more security, and you hear these legislators talk absolute nonsense. What has to happen is the public, your public and the public in general, Murdoch, the New York Times, and others have been very helpful in the Huffington Post to ask for immediate recalls of the legislators, including the President of the United States, like we did a recall of the governor, recall of the Vice President. This is the beginning of a new democracy, and this is a redefinition of what it means to be in the 21st century when our military cannot perform adequately, when they no longer serve our national security, and when the CIA is destructive to our own national security.
All right, but I know that, I mean, I know you've been a senior guy in the CFR. You say it's a debating club now, but in the Pentagon, in the CFR, in the different sectors of power, is the sense that this is the end of not just Obama, but this entire group? Because there is a desperation throughout the system that I've talked to people behind the scenes.
Yes.
They're all freaked out,
they're
too.
Not relevant. That's correct, Alex. In a way, what you're seeing is the more intelligent units that concentrate on geopolitical, like Stratford and others, are really moving towards your area, Austin, Texas, and further south where I'm located. The Northeast is no longer relevant. What you have is these think tanks with a lot of liberals and non-liberals, Rich Williamson. You have a whole bunch of guys who represented Mitt Romney. They didn't know what they were talking about. The Brookings Institute, the American Enterprise Institute, the Heritage Foundation. They're nothing but welfare institutions. They're nothing but institutions which allow people to live their life without having produced anything. The money has to be stopped.
So you got a bunch of spoiled brats pretending to be James Bond on power trips.
Well, it's not only that. There is no James Bond. CIA has never been effective in really taking out anybody. That's why I went on my own. I never used CIA. I was never part of the CIA. But often the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, backed me up. The CIA is a very incompetent organization, replete, unfortunately, with Irish Catholic individuals who follow a hierarchical system, who instead of following the Holy Father, follows the Holy President or whatever system tells them to do what they do. It's not an accident. They're Donlan, they're Brennan, they're Biden. They're all Irish names, McDermott, Rhodes. I mean, you really have a system that really attracts a certain type of individual that needs a hierarchy, that claims that they're serving national security, when in fact that they're destructive of national security. Our national security is really quite safe as long as we get rid of those who destroy it, which is the CIA. Our military has been very destructive. The military-industrial complex, including Halliburton, SAIC, L3 Communication, Northrop Grumman, Bell Helicopters, all useless. We don't need any of that now. We're getting into cyber war and cyber terrorism, which is probably the most important issue, but I don't need all these soldiers who are having sex scandals and can't fight and no longer are able to fight any enemies. We're creating the very enemies we don't need.
Yeah, let's explain what you say about the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned of. They go start wars and fund al-Qaeda so they then have something to fight later, and it helps their interest, but they're destroying the entire tree they're sitting in, the United States.
Correct. In the meantime, however, the good news is we have construction companies, we have individuals who understand that this is totally inappropriate for American society. In the 21st century, we're doing exactly what our founding fathers did, which is to have a revolution in a peaceful way through the Internet with people who I don't know about, anonymous people.
Sure. People that agree with each other, working in different ways. What's going to happen? What, from the insiders right now, where is all this going? How much trouble is Obama in?
The insiders have no idea of what they're doing. Basically, they're the gang who couldn't shoot straight. You know, we always assume that the FBI knows what they're doing. They don't. For 30 years, I couldn't get the FBI to rappel off the helicopters and do anything really in hostage negotiate. Yet they portray themselves in movies as if they know what they're doing. I told you Mueller was a disaster. He was brought in on 9/11. He had been compromised before that. He had been compromised after that. Osama bin Laden, he's now compromised Benghazi. I told you Hillary Clinton has been a disaster and a corrupt individual. She has to be taken out. She can no longer serve in our country. She can no longer be available. She is a criminal, as is Obama.
And she's using the blackmail, right? That's why she's so powerful, is doesn't she have the biggest files?
Well, she has the biggest files, but the bottom line is if you look at the Obama administration, they're nothing more than retread Clinton people who were disasters, and they were retread Carter individuals. None of these guys are originals who came out of anywhere. We do have very talented individuals. I would say I would do what Eisenhower, George Marshall did, and George Marshall did, and I would fire the first 600 generals, admirals, and Air Force generals because they're totally useless. We don't have a war, and I would start to promote our captains and majors and force them to say, okay, enough is enough. Either you stay in the military or you get rid of your superiors.
By the way, what you mentioned is true. They've never done this.
600 generals and all of these incompetents. Easily we could get rid of Panetta, who should have been indicted. Easily we could have gotten rid of Hillary Clinton, and we could have gotten, now Tom Pickering has to be evaluated, Pat Kennedy should be fired, Eric Boswell should be investigated.
Sure.
And every one of the so-called securitized or information that was classified has to be opened up by an independent committee. I do not trust Feinstein. I do not trust Pelosi. I do not trust any of them. It has to be an independent prosecutor.
All right, let me ask you a question as a psychiatrist, and not just a quack one, but somebody that's done famous negotiations, co-written books with Tom Clancy. I just throw that out, not for any narcissism for you, but for listeners to know who was on the air if they just tuned in. StevePachinik.com. Again, I'm Alex Jones of Infowars.com if you just tuned in. Everything you're saying I know to be true from deep research of it. The general public is not, is working too hard to have all the details here. But here's my question for you: when I look at Pelosi and I look at Hillary and I look at the FBI and CIA people they've had follow me and at Bilderberg, they are like little kids talking into their suit jacket. Like you could see like a little kid in a Batman outfit. They're imagining they're superheroes. I go to movies and see bureaucrats and cops watching Olympus Has Fallen, total fantasy, watching Iron Man. The cops and people in the audience think it's real. It's like a nation of children. Where does this go with this Hollywood delusion with, like you said, FBI that can't, rappel off helicopters? And they're buying billions of rounds of ammo, armored vehicles, openly training for war with the American people. They can't even hold Baghdad. They can't control Afghanistan, but they really think they're going to start a civil war. I talk to good FBI people, federal marshals. I get the training manuals. We're the ones that break them. And it says all the Christians are terrorists. All the veterans are evil. I mean, it's like cartoonish, like something Dr. Evil in a comedy would be talking like. You've got the military saying people can't pray, to Jesus. I mean, it's like we've become the Soviet Union, but they haven't taken over. They're just self-destructing, running around like lunatics. So as a psychiatrist, here's my rant. As a psychiatrist, have they gone insane like Nero? Because I know they're competent and they're evil, but I mean, how crazy are they?
It's not relevant to me. As a psychiatrist, you have to remember two things. One, I did assassination. Two, I incarcerated those who were the criminally insane. So either way, it doesn't matter to me whether they're evil or not. Once they've committed the act of terror or criminal, they either go to prison or they're executed. It's quite simple. What you need is a leader who understands that, is not afraid, works within that Constitution because they have been criminally indicted. As long as you have lawyers and legislators, you're going to have nothing but babble and psychobabble. The issue now as a psychiatrist is very simple. From my point of view, I've been used in 5 administrations to take out leaders, to take out systems without having to do as much as the military does because they're ineffective, without using the CIA, but you can take them out. If the people want somebody like me to lead them and I go forth, I mean, they pick somebody, but they have to have somebody who's not beholden to anyone. They have to have somebody who understands the system, is willing to take it down very rapidly and start to fire people the way Marshall did, the way Eisenhower did, and they have to pick people who understand that this is not an issue of whether they're sick or not sick. It's irrelevant to us now. We have a revolution. The revolution is clear. You have people who are totally incompetent, they're totally criminal. Either we do something about it, they get indicted, or they get executed. There's not very much to say more than that, because otherwise we're going to see them commit another act and continuously commit what we call sociopathic acts until you said correctly they get caught. The only way to stop them is to literally stop them. That's what I believe. That's what I've done in 5 administrations, and that's why I don't belong to any one of these parties or any one of the affiliations.
Last week
I fired, and I indicted, and I imprisoned. and I did what I had to do. That's what America has to do now. It's very simple.
Sure, I want to understand their mindset on average so that I can understand, but I understand it's a collection of different groups.
Their mindset, I could call them criminally and sociopath. It doesn't really matter. They don't really care. They just continue on. I mean, Esai started by breaking into cars and built up a security company, SI, and now he's an investigator. I mean, a criminal now investigates criminals. I mean, where they began and where they started is not relevant to me. It's the actions that they've committed. You and I know since the beginning of time in Osama bin Laden, Bush Jr. has never been punished. Never been punished. His father goes out and explains it, and finally his mother says, no more Bushes. Well, that's not enough. Bush has to be held accountable, Cheney, more than just the story, more than allowing them to get on TV. Either he goes under prosecution, criminal, or...
All right, we don't need to go there. Listen, here's my issue. I talk to active duty military people, as you do, and they tell me half the people, a couple of years ago it was like 35%. Now half the people in the military are totally awake. They're listening to this show. I don't say that as it actually, I don't like that. It's kind of scary that nobody else has stood up and that we're one of the biggest oppositions to this. I just want common sense in a future for my children. But let's take Alex Jones and Steve Pachinik out of the equation. Okay, what do you expect things to do, places... what do you expect to unfold now is what I'm trying to get at, because I don't think they're probably going to do anything to Obama, even though he's been caught with his pants completely down. But then all that does is reaffirm the loss of confidence, and then I expect them to stage an even bigger grouping of Boston bombings to then try to put martial law in. They won't call it martial law, and I think that will even make them lose even more credibility.
Well, let me be very blunt. I mean, you know, I've been warned of this repeatedly. There's not an accident that while Obama's been in the presidency, he's lauded and people have lauded the story of Abraham Lincoln, another tyrant from my point of view, who, of course, had gotten rid of habeas corpus and had indicted many of his own people and then had an aggression against the South for reasons that he claimed were the freedom of slavery, but that wasn't the case. It was to retain the republic. You either indict Obama, he goes to prison, or you execute him. There are not many alternatives. Now, either our military will stand up as a military, it won't. Most of the time, I'm very unimpressed by our generals, our colonels, and those who've come to the top. Now I'm asking the majors, the captains, and the lieutenants, if you stay in the military, you're going to decide what you're going to have to do in the military. That means a junta, and that means you're going to have to do it in an effective way. I am asking for treason. Treason in the time. Yeah,
I want to be specific. Hold on, I didn't know you were going to go there. Isn't Obama just a puppet? I wish no harm upon him.
He's not just a puppet. Puppets are as dangerous as anybody else. The puppet talks while the master, whether it's Brennan or the military-industrial complex, is not relevant. If there's to be a military and there's to follow the command and control and their allegiance to the country, then they have to act accordingly. Dempsey did not. Mullen did not. Ryder did not. Jones did not. I mean, I can go through every Marine Corps cabinet. Every one of these generals were brought into the military when they were born in the 70s. None of them really saw combat other than the ones that they created. So you have a military that's dysfunctional, bloated, and ineffective. You have a CIA dysfunctional, bloated, and ineffective.
Yeah, well, let me say this. The last thing I want is anything to happen to Obama outside of courts, because that'll turn him into some type of hero. And what's incredible is you're who you say you are. Co-write books with Tom Clancy, ran black ops all over the world. You know, mainstream news says you assassinated world leaders, and you're on my show saying this. And I mean, are you ready for the Secret Service to come after you?
Secret Service has been after me for a long time. The Secret Service is the most dysfunctional unit I've ever seen. All they do is protect one man, and they protect other presidents. They have no service whatsoever to the United States people. They do not protect them. They make believe that they're monitoring.
No, I know, but you've talked about this stuff before on air. Why aren't they coming after you?
Billions of dollars. Doing nothing more than to protect one man who's incompetent. And the Secret Service, quite frankly, is collusive. There's no reason for a major Secret Service. When you had Truman leaving, he left. When you had Eisenhower leaving, he didn't have an entourage. This was an absolute creation of their own dimension and their own narcissism.
Sure, it's like turning the Chinese emperors into slaves with all the pomp and circumstance, more of the legalist stuff. But look, I'm trying to understand this because I mean, I'm not saying, don't you want to clarify what you said or walk that back? Because, I mean...
No, I don't want to clarify. It's very simple. If I am asked to do what I was asked to do in 5 administrations, to take out Aldo Moro, to take out Noriega, to take out others, why would I not want also to take out the very people who have committed the crimes against our own government? That's not an act of treason when you have tyranny, and they've been proven.
No, I hear you. This is just completely over the top.
I'll go to jail. But if I'm the one to go to jail, then who else will join me? This is a cry for freedom. This is not some right-wing nut. I said this about Osama bin Laden. I said it about 9/11. I said it about Joe Bush Jr. I said it about Cheney. How many times can I repeat it? You don't take a sociopath and you don't let him go. You just incarcerate him, indict him, or execute him. It's not complicated, but you don't listen to his words. And we have a bunch of sociopaths. Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Bush Jr., you have Obama, you have Biden. These are all sociopaths who are rewarded by us, and they're enforced by their own little group called the Secret Service, and a whole group of other sociopaths who are criminal called the CIA, who are total disasters. You have generals who have allegiance to their pension and not to their country, and they create wars that they can't even win. Iraq,
all right,
Afghanistan,
man, I tell you, this is
Yemen, Somalia.
This is an insane time to be alive, and I just wish...
It's not insane. It's really, no, it's what Thomas Jefferson said, my friend.
No, I hear you. You got a lot of cojones.
Must fight for its own democracy. That's what we're doing.
All right.
These guys
I hope for a peaceful solution.
The empire's on.
Been completely blindsided today. Dr. Steve Pachinik has produced major Hollywood movies. He's co-written books with Tom Clancy, written his own bestsellers. He was the main psychiatrist negotiator for the Camp David Accords. He has been involved in black ops all over the world, one of the founders of Delta Force. And he's on my show, talking about all this. And look, it's not that I'm afraid of repercussions, because I'm a guy that's always calling for nonviolence. Because I believe in ideas, and exposing their lies will make them lose credibility. And we're going to go back to Dr. Pachinik, let me have the last word on this, but I'll tell you where I stand. The American people have let corruption take over. We have been too passive. We have worshipped bureaucracy. We have worshipped the red carpets of all these people. The top generals, it's been widely reported, are on beautiful jets with secretaries sex servicing them with, walnut and maple wood paneling and champagne. And then the troops are on C-130s with fleas and flies and ticks defecating in buckets with stuff running down the hallways. And I've talked to family that's in the military, and they're still gung-ho, but they're like, oh, yeah, everything's collapsing, but we can do it. 5, 6, 7 tours. You never made somebody serve over 1 tour. I mean, just why are they committing suicide? You're using them like, 500,000 miles on a pair of tires that are supposed to go 100,000. They know what they're doing. There is a crazy disconnect going on. And the globalists want a civil war in this country. They want to get one started because they can't win the Velvet Revolution. Look, I know that Adam Kokesh isn't a globalist operative, but he wants armed marches on D.C. He has a right to do it, to educate about the Second Amendment. The Supreme Court's ruled they can do it, but the police chief says they can't. D.C. Heller, I understand he has a right. I don't think he's a bad guy. I admire his courage, but my gut says it's bad. And as for Pachinik, Dr. Steve Pachinik here with us, I get him on about Benghazi because he accurately said what happened 7 months ago, a few weeks after it happened. And then he goes off into this whole other area that, Doc, I got to say something. I know you've been a member of the Council of Foreign Relations, the whole 9 yards, and I would have to think that you believe you're protected by something to be able to talk like that on air. But even if I believed what you're saying, obviously I wouldn't say it, but I don't believe what you're saying. I do not believe a military coup in this country is the way to go because the bureaucracy is still all there. I mean, what are you saying on the airwaves here?
What I'm saying is basically you've already had a military coup when every one of the congressmen and senators, you just saw Portman, Senator Portman, the so great spokesman for Mitt Romney, in other words, who's a Republican fiscal, say, oh, no, I need M1 Abrams tanks, when in fact the Army said, we don't need it. And he said, no, he lied. We need it for national security. And the Army said, no. What's happening is every legislator, every senator has been taken hostage by the military-industrial complex. That means the tank, the PETA streets. What has happened is they are already under a military-industrial coup already. What I'm saying is our military is dysfunctional. They are no longer functional. Our generals have no longer been in an area of combat for national security. They've created the wars they've created. It's time for them to be judged,
all right,
indicted, and executed.
Okay, no more of that. Listen.
Now, listen, wait a minute. It's not something that I'm just out of right field. I ran the criminally insane ward. I had the same types of generals there who were indicted for mass murders. I had the same types of legislators who were indicted for all kinds of criminal activities. This is not unique. A physician has two obligations: to heal and to execute if necessary if the patient is moribund or you have cancer. What we have now is the cancer in the system. The cancer in the system is growing to such an extent that words are not doing anything. So you have somebody like the DCM who comes out and blows the whistle, and I admire him. You have our regional security officer who admires him. Then I have somebody like Issei saying, oh, that's very nice, and a lot of legislators who just have blabber. Unless you indict your president, unless you indict and have an investigation, it doesn't have to be with wars and weapons.
No, I get it. We need to have a special prosecutor.
Clinton for fellatio. You certainly can indict Obama for military miscreant behavior, for inappropriate and command and control, for criminal activities against the United States, and you can do that for Biden, you can do that for the White House, you can do that for everyone.
But how do you – sure. Let me stop you for a minute. There you go. I mean, we do what we did with Nixon. That's the way this needs to go. My question to you is, they are creating a secret army, the billions of bullets, the armored vehicles, the training for war with us. So I'm trying to stop all this before it goes to that.
Well, it's not going to go to that because, number one, this army didn't even function well in Iraq and the wars they created. They didn't function well in Afghanistan. What is happening now, the real burden goes to those below the generals. That's why they address the captains and the lieutenants who say, do you want to remain in the army? Clean out your Army, clean out your Navy, clean out your Air Force. The veterans, 1 million, 40% who have PTSD and 40% who have suicide rates. If you want to do something with it, then you're going to have to deal with the VA that's ineffectual, General Shinseki, who have asked for the retirement repeatedly, and for the fact that you will not get the treatment. You have 1 million veterans who have to do something. In 1927, 1 million veterans walked on in Washington, and it was General MacArthur who had to stop it. But unless you go to the streets, unless you go to the Internet, unless anonymous people do what they have to do, this system will not break down just by little spurts of discussion and a little spurt of questioning. It has to be exactly what I do. A physician examines, cures, or decides, you terminate. That's exactly what we do. We apportion health care. Whether it sounds obscene or Mengele, that's not even relevant. We do that all the time. Ask any physician in the emergency room. He will evaluate what's out there. The people he can treat, he can treat. Those he can't will have to wait, and those who committed the crimes or whatever will rarely get treated. Now we've come into a system that is so sick that unless you prosecute them, indict them with an investigator that's totally independent of the system, that doesn't get a bonus, doesn't get paid, is not part of the military like Dempsey, is not part Pickering, who belongs to Boeing and to various other organizations of the Council on Foreign Relations, or Pat Kennedy, who's paid by the State Department, or Eric Boswell, who's still being paid by the State Department, or Dempsey, who has his pension and double dip. Do you understand what I'm getting at? Unless you get to the core of the money and take away their money and then strip them down into an investigative procedure, nothing will happen. If nothing then happens, then the American public deserves what it is called for. What I say is revolution. Revolution, I said it 11 years ago when 9/11 happened. Revolution in any way you want, the form that you take. But Thomas Jefferson said it, Adams said it, George Washington said it. He warned us repeatedly of people like Obama, of Clinton, and Bush Jr. They are constant sociopaths who will self-aggrandize. Whatever they are as a psychiatrist is not relevant to me. What they do and damage to our veterans, to our people who have no jobs, to the wars and killing of 380,000 innocent Iraqi, Afghani, Pakistanis, and create civil wars in Iraq and shift it to the Shiites with Iran then, and then create another war where they go gung-ho in the CIA. That is criminal activity. You have to pay for that. You go.
It really is criminal activity. Well, the reason I bring up this,
very complicated.
Sure. The reason I bring up the psychology.
That, I will be happy to explain it.
Sure,
again
Doc,
and
can you
again.
hear me? I mean, my point is they are going crazy. I mean, they're publicly funding Al-Qaeda while saying give our rights up because of Al-Qaeda. What will happen if the American people don't have a restoration of the republic and try to turn things around? What will happen? They will just steal everything until everything collapses. They're devaluing the dollar. They are insane. I understand you're desperate. I understand you're putting yourself out on a limb saying this. I mean, I know you're a real guy who's done a lot of things and, you know, basically, you know, has a lot of will. My only issue is I think we're winning in the info war. And I think if things just go a little bit further down the line without having a shooting war, we're going to win this thing. Now, if a shooting war starts...
I understand what you're saying. I'm not saying necessarily a shooting war. I'm just saying that a war of action. A war of action doesn't have to be a shooting war. For example, Murdoch and Fox News did a great job in Benghazi. The New York Times, Jill Abramson, did a very great job on Sandy Hook. Huffington Post did a great job on revealing various others. You've done a phenomenal job. It's got to keep going on. The issue here is that you don't have a body of legislative individuals who can be trusted. Feinstein cannot be trusted. Pelosi cannot be trusted. Max Baucus. You can't trust the people who are overseeing the criminals.
Well, they're weird. They're weird people.
So that has to have immediate action. Whether you incarcerate them or you assign a special prosecutor designated by the people or the governors, that's fine by me. But the question is the system has to change much more rapidly than our going on the radio for 11 years and warning people. This has been going on repeatedly.
And it's clearly getting worse. All right, Dr. Pachenik.
I'm not worried about what happens to me. I'm not desperate at all. I'm as calm and cool collected as I was the day when I said to you 9/11 was a standout. It was Paul Wolfowitz, Richard Pearl, Steve Hadley, Sandy Berger on rendition. I know them all. This is not something that I was totally surprised. This was not something, but nothing was done. Then they all got frightened that I might take them out. No, I haven't taken them out. Can I take them out? Yes. Does the intelligence community know I can take them out? Yes. Are they afraid of me? Yes. Am I afraid of them? No. Is this a stand down? Yes. Am I the only American who can say this? No. But every American is afraid to state, this is what I am. I'm an American citizen, and I'm sick of what's going on. That's all they have to say. The governors are powerful. You've got Southern governors like Rick Perry. You've got Scott Perry. You've got in Florida. You've got Rick Scott in Florida. You've got South Carolina. You got North Carolina. You got Georgia. The power has shifted geopolitically from the north. And I say the think tanks and the Council on Foreign, they're all dead. They're just they're the dead. They're the basically demented individuals who have nothing else to say, and they still want to stay alive. They're being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. You have Stroke Taub running the Brookings Institute, who was the former Deputy Secretary of State and the roommate of Clinton, and he's running an institute totally useless.
Well, no, they hate America. They hate free market. He's an admitted communist.
By the U.S. government. You've got L3 Communications, totally useless. You've got Boeing. You got Northrop Grumman, all of whom immediately went from a dysfunctional system into cybersecurity and got paid for nonsensical work and pieces of work that I look at and I say are not even worthy. So unless the people stand forth and they want to do it through the legal process,
no, I hear you. It's a disaster. Pachenik, Doc, we're out of time. We're out of time. Listen, I want to thank you for coming on. And we'll hopefully try to talk to you again soon and see what happens with these statements you've made on air.
Well, it's going to blow out, Alex. It'll blow out more.
So just expect everything to get even crazier. All right, Dr. Pachenik, thank you very much. I've got some closing comments on this. I've been on air 3 hours and 46 minutes. I got a little bit tired towards the end of the show, and I get hit by something like this. I'm ready for a nap. I mean, I wanted to talk about Benghazi. I want to bring these people down with their crimes. And Pachenik, it's just, my life is too bizarre. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you right now. This is way over my head, but it's way over everybody else's head. We're all just humans, and this is crazy land. The globalists are crazy. And the only way to respond to crazy is crazy. I mean, I get that, but I just can't handle it anymore. By the way, I'm not on air tomorrow. I'll be calling in on the show. I'm going to spend some time with family. We've got Holland Van de Nieuwenhof coming in. He always does a great job. And we're going to have Jakari Jackson and David Knight in here with them. And I'll be calling in at noon on the show. I'm just spending some time with my parents for Mother's Day with my kids. Only way I can spend time with my kids, because I end up working 18 hours a day, is to take off a day here and there. But I'll be back Sunday live, 4 to 6 o'clock. There's InfoWars Nightly News tonight. White House rethinking plan to arm Syrian rebels. Wait a minute, didn't they do that already? It's just what they put out to create the illusion that they haven't been arming them all along. That's just designed to get to a public that doesn't pay attention. Will you guys punch up Infowars.com for me? Thanks. Breaking, 3D printable gun ordered shut down by the government. That is big breaking news. We have the letter. We broke it. Infowars.com. Clinton Rice presented awards for public service on the same day as Benghazi hearing. It's just, there's no end to these nuts, man. They love awards. It's like, total, what do you call it, narcissism world. Boston top cop warns against police state. I mean, that is really a joke. Pot calling the kettle black. Al-Qaeda now in control of CIA's covert war in Syria. Australian activists defeat spy cameras in landmark case. Very important article. Israel rescues Al-Qaeda terrorists from Syria. That's in the Israeli papers. That they go get the jihadis. They're going across the border, and they got field hospitals set up taking care of Al-Qaeda. I mean, we have entered the 9th dimension here. It just goes on and on. That's just some of the news up at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Here's some of the news over at Drudge. Obama seeks to make Cruz the face of the GOP opposition. They're scared of Cruz being a libertarian Ron Paul type. So they act like they're not scared and go, better not be like that or we'll beat you. Dems long to turn Lone Star State blue. Obama is in Austin right now. We're on the radio right now while Pachenik was saying all that stuff. I mean, this is just complete bizarro world. President's second trip to Texas in 2 weeks. Rick Perry, he's come to the right place to tout economic growth. Texas ranks 18th in unemployment. Illinois ranks 50th. Governor will be waiting on tarmac. I think Obama's already landed, hadn't he? He's going to fly a stupid helicopter around. Texas cheerleader after winning Bible lawsuit. I knew that God was going to work it out, so that's part of that. All hat, no cattle. There's Obama. Absolutely, that's a good saying. Big Sis. Bill gives Big Sis virtually unlimited sole, reviewable. That's what they're doing with Obamacare, all this. Transfer dictatorial power. Discretion to ICE. Council warns Congress. I mean, it's just a total takeover. Bill Gates paid $330 million for a Da Vinci manuscript. And it just goes on and on. Intelligence report noted possibility of Boston attack. Gee, think so? FBI under fire. Oh, really? Why do you think? Said they didn't know him. Of course they knew him. And it just goes on and on. Hillary accepts public service award. Again, on day of Benghazi, I already mentioned that. American stabbed outside embassy in Cairo. Russian showcases military pomp for Victory Day. It just goes on and on. That celebrates the end of World War II. Or the victory over the Nazis. Detroit's in worse shape than they even thought previously. Well, I thought government would fix it. That's just some of the news. And there's a bunch of key Second Amendment videos we've got posted up on Infowars.com and Infowars Nightly News tonight, 7 o'clock Central Standard Time. If you're not a PrisonPlanet.tv membership, this show is Mach 50 on Hair on Fire. If you're not supporting us, you're not supporting the fight for liberty. So fund the InfoWar today. Become a PrisonPlanet.tv member.